We're now live. We're live.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Eric. And I'm not sure who's watching or who's live, but this will be our final budget workshop for the 2020-2021 budget season. All the board members are here. The administration is on. We're going to walk through the presentation and what we really need to accomplish by the end of this meeting is a determination on how we want to go forward with the budget in terms of the amount, like the actual budget number, and what tax levy we're going to go with. This will be voted on tomorrow. And really, the decision's got to essentially be made tonight because the resolution has to be prepared for us to vote on tomorrow. So those are sort of that's what we're looking to get out of this last workshop. One thing I will ask of the board, especially from the last few virtual meetings we've had, it's kind of easy, I think, for us we wind up talking over each other a lot, which I guess is a lot easier to do when you're virtual as opposed to when we're sitting in the room together. So if possible, maybe if you have a question or something to say, maybe just raise your hand quick or say something so that we give each other the opportunity to talk and we don't just keep talking over each other. So that's sort of my only ask.
Okay.
Other than that, Steve, we'll turn it to you and we'll let you go through it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kern. Can everyone hear me?
I'm sorry, Steve, one last question. Would you prefer questions as we go or questions at the end?
I think this time, I think questions as we go should be okay.
Okay.
I think we'll be fine. This is going to be basically a lot of review. So I think as we go should be just fine.
Okay, thank you.
Can everyone hear me okay through the mask? We're good? Okay.
Yeah, fine. Good, Steve.
All right, appreciate it. All right, for our last budget workshop, here we go. As it says, everybody who's out there in TV land, we miss our kids. We miss your kids. And we hope to get them a budget for next school year and get it going and get it done. Move into the next slide here, I hope. Here we go, come on. There we go. As you can see, not much has changed here. We did reduce our salaries by $275,000, thanks to Larry and you folks for voting on the incentive program. So salaries did get reduced by $275,000, and then we also took out the other $25,000 for the marketing plan that Don had mentioned. You can see that here. You can see this is a summary. We went through, this is proposal number 5, as you'll see in the far right corner. And you can see the bottom right corner, the salaries of $275 and the other that was reduced for marketing of $25 for reduction of $300,000. So we now have a budget proposal of $144,033,814 or an increase of 1.99%. Just a review of our tax levy limit calculation as we go through. We've seen this almost in every one, so I won't belabor the point. But our maximum allowable tax levy isn't really 2%, it's 2.87% for a maximum of $114,640,089 or $3,195,611. Anticipated revenues, as you can see, what we did this time is on the bottom row for the tax levy, you'll notice we used 2%. Again, that's the maximum that we were using for our slide. And we'll go through that as we go. Again, the rest is all the same for review. We'll review one more time the tax levy and rate trends. One thing I did is I updated the far right corner on this for 2019-20 because what we want to learn here is you can tell the 1% column as you see. What we've actually been able to keep right now is 1/10 of 1% of what we proposed to go out with. And the next slide gives you the dollar figure. So the blue, again, far right corner is 19-20. You can tell what we needed this year in what we wanted to raise in real property taxes was $1.1 million. And as of the last board meeting, you approved small claims and tax certiorari's for a total so far for the year of $982,266 worth of givebacks. So that means of the 1.1 million or the 1%, we actually ended up with so far ending up with $121,000, or like I said, 1/10 of 1% of what we've, so effectively almost zero. Just a review, and you can see that's happened time and time again. So our budget analysis right now, our budget of 144,033,814. Left-hand column takes the percentages from 2% right down to 0. The center column is the tax increase that would provide. The right-hand column is the use of reserves for each one of those percents, like we've gone over before. But this is now for a budget that's $300,000 less. Now, what we really want to learn is, okay, what does that mean for an average home? What I did is I went through, we used the town of Ramapo's tentative tax roll, because the town of Ramapo actually takes on 96.6% of our tax roll. So it is actually the largest municipality within the school district, obviously, or the school district is within. So using and taking their tentative roll amount and just very simply dividing it by the number of parcels. I didn't split it up between land and real estate. Or land and buildings. I just took the total of the assessments, divided it by the total number of parcels, and it came out to 53,607 is the average assessment. Now, again, that may vary a few thousand one way or the other. I know the village of Suffern used a slightly lower number. So asking around, it seemed that number was I won't say it's completely accurate, but it was within the ballpark. So that being said, we went down the left-hand column again is the budget levy increase from 2% right down to 0.50. You'll notice the 2021 and 2019 school year, which is this school year. So the center column represents what someone with an average house of, or an average property, should I say, of 53,607 is paying currently. Now, no reflection of STAR or any other exemptions here, because we want to be able to compare apples to apples. So right now, a person with a home that has an average assessment of about 53,600 would be paying $10,357 in real property taxes to the school district. Now, as you can see in the percentages now in the left-hand column, the 2021, there's the new amounts. Go over 2 columns to the dollar change. That's the annual dollar change that would be affected by those increases, by the budget levy increase. Now, the right-hand column.
I'm sorry, Steve, I'm sorry. I have a question. The assessment, did you talk to Scott Shedler for the assessments?
I went to his website.
Okay, because you could talk to Scott and he'll give you what the assessed values are for $50,000 for the average home, because that's what they use, is for the average assessment of $50,000. And he could tell you what it was for the assessed value of a $50,000 house for the beginning of, I mean, like I could give you those numbers for the beginning of the year, and then you could calculate exactly what it would be.
$3,600 is not material in this calculation at all. But I appreciate that. I do. I mean, I can calculate it very quickly for 50,000 too. It's not, again, it's not a material.
It doesn't go by the number of properties. It goes by the assessment within your taxes. It doesn't go by the number of property. Like I'm confused by how you calculated it.
Quite simply, if your home and property was worth $53,607, your taxes this year would be $10,357 based on our current tax rate for the school district.
But you took the number of properties within the district?
No, within the whole roll.
I'm confused how you got the number of 53,600. Can you explain?
I guess I'm confused by what's the difference if that's 53,000 versus 50.
I don't know how you got the number of properties. That's what I'm.
It's right on the bottom, it's right on the bottom of the roll.
Oh, with the number of properties.
Correct.
Okay,
Total
'cause that's
assessment
not,
divided by the total number of properties assessed. So it's a simple calculation. Again, I can make that 50,000. That's not a big deal. I mean, that's a few dollars. You're looking at $2.65 a thousand at 2% times 3. So you're looking at less than a $9 difference.
I would have to, that's not usually how it's done. I would have to look at what you're referring to. Okay.
Well, again, not a material difference if it's 50,000 or 53,000. It's like I said, the difference at 2% is $2.65 per thousand. So 265 times 3.6. Again, it's about an $8. It's about an $8. It would be $8 less than $142.
Right, but you're saying everybody in the district, everybody has the same exact assessment because the number of properties is the same at 53,607, which it isn't, but okay.
It's average. It's the average.
Right. So what we're saying here, let me make sure.
Case, if I might, in any case, the dollar change would only at 2% is $142. At 1.5%, it would be $90. 1%, $39. At 0.5%, they actually save money, and it's negative $12 because, again, if you remember how we talked about if the budget levy increase is greater than the tax rate increase, what must have happened?
So,
remember that inverse relationship? Assessments go up, tax rate goes down, everything else being equal. That's exactly what's happened here. That's why your budget levy increases 2% and your tax rate change is actually less. Because
okay.
now you're spreading that number over a larger pie.
Steve, let me make sure I'm understanding this correctly.
Okay.
With what I'm looking at in this slide, at say an average, let me rephrase, sorry. At a 1.5% levy increase, the average annual increase to the average taxpayer in this district would be $90 for the year. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Approximately, yeah.
Okay. And at 2% levy increase, it would be an average impact of $142 for the entire year.
Correct. Approximately $12 a month.
Okay. Okay.
Excuse me, Steve, you said $12 a month?
Yeah, because 12 times 12 would be 144.
Right.
So it's $11.90,
It's your coffee money for the week.
For some, yes.
I don't want to make it that simple, but.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to confuse people who might be listening as well. And they say, geez, my average assessment is 53,000, blah, blah, blah. But my home is worth $500,000. Well, remember, down in the bottom left corner, it says uniform percent of value is 11.44%, which is what that $53,000 represents in that average home, remember.
Okay, I
won't confuse anybody anymore.
What does that mean in English?
Right, that's what I was going to ask. For somebody like me who's not a finance person, what does that mean?
Steve, maybe I could take a shot at
it. 53,000 only represents 11% of the real value of your home.
Correct.
Okay. So
you can multiply that number by 10, basically.
Yes, absolutely, Angus. Very well put.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Okay.
And that's still, and if that means if your house is worth $500,000, that you're looking at about $1,400 of increase in taxes. Am I saying that right, Steve? Roughly?
Yeah, it's only $142 because everybody's assessments are jumping.
But I'm just saying based on the numbers you're giving us here, if your house is worth $500,000, you're looking at about a $1,400 increase in your taxes.
No, because your home is really only being assessed at $53,000.
Dollars.
So you're only multiplying 53 times that tax rate. Because everything is per thousand.
Okay.
All right, so I want to clarify Angus's point, because I was thinking the same type of thing. So even if you took that 53,000 and multiplied it by by, let's say 9 or 10 because of that uniform percent.
Right.
So even for somebody who owns a home that's $536,000, that has no impact on the numbers above.
No, because what happens is when you multiply that out and get that $536,000 now, you also have to do the same thing. You have to do it. It's a division problem with the tax rate. The tax rate right now is up in the $195 range.
Right, but
they call it a true tax rate. A true tax rate now would be $22.40.
Yeah, but
Okay.
Steve, if I have an assessed value of $90,000 or $125,000 instead of 53, you don't have. What are you saying is the rate for every 53,000?
Yeah, yes, Melissa. So,
and we took a $53,000 house, we multiplied it by the tax rate. You would do the same thing with a $100,000 house. You'd have to multiply it by the calculated tax rate.
So what are you saying the rate is?
The rate right now would be, hold on just 1 second. Hopefully you still see my presentation. Hold on. The 2021 Programa would be $195.85 based on that equalization rate. So that's a $2.65 per thousand difference. The true tax rate though is only $22.40 if everybody was at 100%. That's the difference.
But not everybody's taxed at 100% though, right?
No one's taxed at 100%. The average value of this whole roll is only 11.44%. That's what the equalization rate means. That means the state takes that whole tax roll, they take a look at the value of that whole tax roll, they sample all kinds of different properties. They put a uniform value on that whole roll. And what they're saying is when the assessor came out with his total dollar figure of what all the properties are worth, they're only worth basically 11.4% of the true value. That's all that roll represents. That's what that means. Yeah, we're getting kind of deep in the weeds, and I think we're just going to confuse people the more we get deep, the deeper we get.
I'm sorry, we're deep in the, I just want to make sure I'm understanding where you're getting the assessed values and how you're calculating them, because I worked with the assessed values for years, and that doesn't make sense to me how you're calculating the assessed values. I need to understand how you're calculating them and how I'm telling my constituents how it's working, because I can't tell them that I'm voting on something and how I'm getting deep in the weeds and telling them it's okay to vote on a budget that I don't agree with. So
maybe the easier thing to do is to look at the property taxes. The average taxpayer in Suffern Central this year, 1920, paid around $10,357. Instead of getting lost in the assessed value, the average taxpayer, which is what he's trying to show you, paid that amount. And now, if we raise taxes by 2%, the average taxpayer will pay $142 more. If you have a $1 million home, yeah, you'll pay double that. If you have a $25,000 home, you'll pay half that. I think the easiest thing, instead of getting messed up in the assess, is to look at the property.
Per thousand, each taxpayer paid $193.20. So if they were at 50,000, 193.20, 25 times 50, they paid $9,660 in 1920 taxes. So they paid $9,660. So where is that on your sheet? Because that's almost $1,000 less than what you're showing. Like, you should show the actual of what they paid in property taxes in 2019-20. If you're going to show, so if it was 193.20, 25, 87, I'm taking this right off my bill, and it was 53,607. Okay, good. So you do have exactly. Perfect.
Yes.
So that should be exactly what was paid on your bill, and that's what should be showed as what was paid on your bill. I'm good with it. Okay, perfect.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. I'm happy.
No, and
All right,
that's what you
next
should
slide.
know, is that this came right off of the bill.
That's fine.
Okay, so is everybody on the same page with this slide now?
Okay.
I'm good.
All right.
Wait a
Okay.
second, go back to that one slide. What do you have as 11.44%? Oh,
That's
you
the
have uniform percentage of value rate of 11.44. It should be 11.6%.
Not according to their sheet.
I just
Whose
got
sheet?
it straight.
Whose sheet?
This is the 2020 town tentative roll. 11.6 was for this year, not next year.
Oh,
For 2019 or 2021?
This tentative roll that's out there right now in their year is called 2020. The rate, the 11.6% that you talk about is actually for 2019. That's when their total assessments were 558,173,719 in the town of Ramapo.
So the 11.6.
That's actually this year.
Okay.
Next year, the assessments actually raised to 569,96351 with the equalization rate, or the uniform percent of value rate, as they call it, of 11.44%.
Okay.
Okay? You good? All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Am I muted still? No.
No.
I had to
Next.
mute. Apparently you could hear my cat meowing, so I had to mute the thing. No, sorry.
No, it's okay. All right, reserve utilization. Let me just make sure I didn't skip 2 slides. There we go, reserve utilization. Now, as we walk through this budget, at each percentage, just like we've done every time, this takes us from 2% right down to 0.5% increments. The first 1, 2, 3, 4 reserves that you see are you can tell that they're all the same dollar figure, and then the tax cert actually changes and basically plays cleanup on all of this, because we took everything that we thought we could take out of the other reserves. We used our professional judgment looking at this and said, okay, we didn't want to use it all, but we wanted to leave some. We wanted to be able to keep replenishing this and being able to use it year after year. So it was a multi-year event the way it should be. And as you can see with the tax cert basically here is basically, for lack of better words, it's picking up the balance of anything that we would need. Now that's only if we need it. Only if we need it. If we finish the years like we normally would, probably we wouldn't have to touch the tax reserve, but maybe we would.
Okay.
And I say maybe we would, and here's why. As you'll see in a few slides here, there are some things, there's some unknowns out there. And let me see, it's the very next slide, right here. Things like state and federal aid. Well, I'm sorry we couldn't wait till the end of the week to the 15th for the state look back, because we needed the time to get the ballots mailed out. And so did many other school districts. So, we're taking a chance of going, okay, we can always come back and reduce our budget if we have to, if we get a huge swing for some reason in state aid. I don't think we will. We receive about $11 million. We're slated to receive about $11 million in foundation aid, which is our state aid, to run our school district for the 2021 school year. So that means if we get as much as a 20% cut, we would be looking at about a $2.2 million cut in our foundation aid. All the rest of the aids from the state are expense-based aids, which they haven't said they're going to touch as of yet, to any extent, put it that way. So right now, the district is very well positioned to be able to take that sort of a fluctuation.
Right. Hang on. Did somebody have a question there?
Go ahead.
The state aid is a total of 16 million.
That's total state aid. That's not foundation aid. Foundation aid is not expense driven on this. It's by the number of children and et cetera. That you can count on every year. The other state aids are like a BOCES aid, where it's based on what you expend. Same thing with your special education, your high cost aids, and those types of aids. The only other thing that you have that pretty much stays the same based on the number of kids would be your textbook aid and your hardware and software aid, with very small amounts. It's the foundation aid that's that solid number that you can count on every year. So that being said, we have some TRS and ERS rates. That's a teacher's retirement system for those of you out there, and the employees' retirement system rates. Obviously, with the stock market going up and down and interest rates obviously not being as high as they normally are, it's guesswork right now at best, because now that the stock market again seems to be incrementally, as they say, is doing that V-shaped recovery. Well, I don't know for how long. I can't guess. Will it go back down again? Will it stay flat? We don't know. So there's a guess there with the TRS and ERS rates. TRS rates we know are going to go up about 1.5%, as we've already had that. Health insurance rates I'm concerned about right now, because although we know, our estimates that we received for health insurance were very low for the increases going into next year, but will that stay that way? Or will we see maybe a mid-year adjustment because of the COVID expenses that now they're experiencing? I don't know. Or will the federal government pick it all up? We don't know. So again, these are the unknowns. Transportation the same way. Opening our buildings in September. I'm sorry, my mask keeps sliding on me. My opening the buildings, will there be some COVID requirements and expenses there? Will we have to buy every child in the district a mask, gloves? Will there be any more special cleaning procedures that we have to do? There could be some very, very large expenses with that. We don't know. What's going to happen when it comes to September opening, and how we'll have to prepare for that. Same thing for technology and software, with our curriculum and being able to communicate. For example, right now we use Google Meeting. Will we be able to? I mean, with the changes in Ed Law 2D, right now I think we're okay. But you've already heard the problems with Zoom. They're correcting them. They're not correcting them. I won't even get into the weeds. But again, there's also curriculum software that our teachers are using. And it differs obviously by grade level and by type of student, whether you're a special ed student, regular ed student, et cetera. Summer school. Will there be a summer school? What will that look like? Will it be in person? Will it be, all technology driven again? Will it all be online? So these are the things that we're taking into account right now and going, we really need some, if there's ever a time to have a little bit of a play in your budget, if you will, it's now. And we're seeing that. So that being said, we'll go into proposition number 2 that's also on the budget for this coming year. Again, we had the LED lighting, the installation of the fire alarm system, and the renovation and replacement of the roofs at both the middle school and Sloatsburg Elementary School. We took, if you will, if you remember, we had $700,000 a year. Can you give me that, please? I'm sorry. If you remember, a few years back, we passed a resolution for a $17 million reserve, basically, where $7 million was actually going to come through the budget every, over the next 10 years at $700,000 a year, and $10 million would come through the capital reserve over 2 years, and that you would fund that. So that being said, what we did is we took that, and there was $2.9 million, a little over $2.9 million balance right now in the capital reserve. So instead of transferring that $700,000 this year, what we decided to do was, listen, there's a balance sitting there in the capital reserve, which will take care of all 3 of these projects. That being said, when you look at the first one, the LED project, I went over with John the payback period of these, and sure enough, it will save us almost 40% of our utility costs. Now, that being said, the payback period on the $1.5 million that was proposed is a little over 3 years. So by doing it as a capital project, we get aid on the $1.5 million. So you almost get 50% back in state building aid. Plus you enjoy the savings you're getting in the electric bill in a payback of 3 years.
Steve, can you elaborate on that a bit so that we understand that a little bit better?
Yes. The project is slated for $1.5 million.
Now we're talking now, just so everybody's we're speaking only about the LED lights portion of this.
Only about the LED lighting.
Okay.
When you go through the presentation, you find that it pays for itself in just about 3.57 years, I believe was the number, about 3.5 years, a little over 3 years anyway. Because the numbers there are actually deflated a little bit. It's actually, I'll say 3 years is a much better from looking at their percentages and their calculations. But in any case, so in 3 years, a $1.5 million project will completely pay for itself by the savings in the electric bill alone, because you're going to reduce your kilowatt usage by almost 40%. So that being said, what you do is you leave your electric line item in your budget exactly the same. So I'll just use some round numbers. If it was $100 a year, you'd leave it at $100 a year, but you'd only spend $60 a year because you're saving 40%. Mm-hmm. So what you do is you take that $40 saving, now you put it into the capital reserve
For 15 years.
and it self-funds itself. And you take the state aid from the project that you're going to get over 15 years, and that also use that now to fund the capital reserve. So now the operating budget is now what it needs to put in there of that $700,000 every year becomes that much less.
So
you literally make money.
Okay, this question really is for John.
Okay.
Hi, John, haven't seen you in a while.
I know. I miss you guys.
Well, no, I remember meeting you up at Sloatsburg when you were doing the tour with us. And this is why I was so in favor of you becoming director, was that you've been in the district for a long period of time, and you know basically every single roof that has been on the various buildings. But I thought we sort of had a plan that the idea, remember I had been speaking to you once or twice, if I remember correctly, about solar. And the idea was we were trying to do solar, and of course they would come in and you had to do the roof first, okay? But then you brought in your consultants who said that before you can do anything in terms of solar, you have to basically do the LED lighting, which we basically said yes, because that's going to save us money. And then the following year, we would do the roofs with regard to putting in solar, which would be additional savings really for the district. I don't understand why I can understand why we would do the LED lighting, which is the cost savings and coming out of the capital budget. It's not going to be voted on at all, okay, in terms of the regular budget. But why did you put in 2 roofs at this point when we're doing the LED lighting?
Well, the last thing that you want to do, Don, basically is have solar be the people to put in your roofs. That's the last thing that you want to do. What you want to do, and I believe during the meeting, was solar, roofs are roofs. So the idea of doing it this way is that the savings that we're generating from the LED lighting can then be put back into the installation and the renovations of the roof. The roofs we know we have to do. All the warranties are due by 2020, 2021. With that being said, using this new product, we don't have to necessarily do a complete roof replacement. We can do a restoration, which is much like what I showed you guys when I brought you on the roof at the high school. It's less of a cost than doing a full, complete restoration, and you're getting a superior product. The best part about that is, in 20 years' time, you put down another top coat with basically a paint roller and a 5-gallon bucket, and you get another 20 years out of it. And if that's not good enough, you do the same thing again and you get 60 years out of that roof. There's no lapse, there's no seams, there's nothing, and you are golden for the rest of your roof replacements in the district. You don't have to ever worry about that again.
So what happened to solar?
Well, I can tell you, if I might, back in September 17th of 2019, I don't know if you remember this presentation that was given to you by your architects.
Correct.
And basically what it said was solar really didn't work. They were offering $4 million worth of roofs, but when you go through the numbers, you're paying $8 million for them.
Over a period of time.
Basically, the kilowatt per hour charges were being escalated to pay for the roof.
So are you still thinking of doing solar now, John, or what's? Because that's
there's always a possibility and there's a potential to do solar. Now, the reason why I say we do,
but not on roofs,
but not in this particular case, not on roofs, not at this point, or any point, maybe further later on in the future, and I'll explain why. First of all, the first thing you want to do is you want to decrease your usage in the building, okay? When you're decreasing the usage in the building, you then are gaining your savings from the utility costs. Using the savings from the utility cost, you then can start to do all your restorations on your roof. Technically, that would be free of charge. Net. So that's really the first thing that you want to do. Now, the thing is with solar, as of right now, your solar panels at best are 20% efficient. At best. Now, 5 years from now, 6 years from now, the efficiency on solar could be 50 to 60% efficient. So what does that mean? That means that if we decrease the demand in the building, we do the roofs as roofs, then by the time we entertain solar, the real estate that you would need in order to accommodate the less kilowatts in the building now becomes more of a potential that we could either ground mount, we can maybe use a portion of the roof, we can maybe use carports. So in theory, we could probably get more use and savings out of the solar by using it that way.
I've done projects before, and it's very nice when they're underground as well, because then it becomes a learning opportunity for children as well. You use it as a teaching station.
There's a whole program.
You work with the solar company and they go out and they teach them how it works. They take the measurements and they calculate monthly savings, and it works really nice.
Yeah,
one of the local BOCEs, and it's very nice teaching opportunity for kids.
North Rockland and some of the schools in Orange County are putting in solar already. And, you know, we saw those different examples of Maryland.
And I'm not saying that that's not the possibility or that's not the case either, Don, but each one of those situations are different. Each one of them worked within a financial situation for them. In our particular case, looking at this financially to be the best course of us to go is using the LED, decreasing the amount of usage, get superior roofs at basically a fraction of the cost, because doing it that way, you're getting 47.6% back in building aid. So I can get a $7 or $8 million roof, basically pay $3.5 million on it, and get, for the most part, 60 years out of it. Right. So then, okay, now you've just set up a framework where you can start to introduce solar, whereas now the solar panels themselves have become quite more efficient. Your demand on electric has already decreased. So your real estate that you would need in order to accommodate with solar and or power the buildings now becomes a smaller footprint. Other districts, there's a possibility that they have done it where they've had major amounts of land where they could utilize. Where they weren't using roof restorations as a part of that. They probably already had their roof done. So each district has their own set of scenarios in order what's going to work financially for them. Going through this, and I've gone through just about every rabbit hole I could possibly imagine to see what will and what would be the best course of action. This is kind of where we came up with.
Do the roofs be done this year? Can they wait another year?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Do the roofs have to be done this year, or could they wait another year?
All the roofs don't have to be done this year. These two roofs, we would like to do them this year. And there's a reason for it. Okay. I go through a very systematic way of doing this. One is I look at, in the course of the year, where we have the majority of roof leaks. I know that the warranties are starting to become due, and then they're going to start to fade out. I know that there are going to be roof leaks when you're dealing with an EPDM roof that has laps, and it's a flat roof. So there's always the potential of leaks. So taking that, I go through the district and I say, okay, where did we have the majority of the leaks? In this particular case, the majority of the leaks that we had were the Suffern Middle School, new gymnasium, and Sloatsburg Library roof. So I say, okay, great. This falls into our $17 million plan over the next 10 years, where I take roughly $500,000 to $800,000 per year and throw that into roofing projects. So how do I determine those roofing projects? One, like I said, which ones did we get the most leaks from? The second is I actually have biannual roof inspection done by the manufacturer's certified installer. And what they do is they come out twice a year, they go through all the roofs, and they give it a grading system. Now, it's not your typical normal grading system. Like, there's a grade A through D. A being good condition, B meaning monitor the condition, C meaning when they were out to do the inspections, they had to do some repairs, and D means they need additional work to be done. Those two particular areas fall within the B and C rating. With that being said, we also use a preventative maintenance program where my staff physically walks the roofs twice a year to see any kind of seams that are open, see if any nail holes that are on there, because our object is let's get the most that we can out of these roofs. I know the warranty is up. Like I've said before, just because your car has a 3-year, 36,000 mile warranty doesn't mean it's automatically going to break down after 36,000 miles. But however, you also want to protect yourself. The system that we're using, in this particular system, we can perform a restoration providing that the insulation under the EPDM is dry, okay? And when I say dry, meaning yes, if there's a few leaks, there's a few pieces of insulation that can be cut out and we replace that. But SCD will still consider that a restoration project, much like what we did at the gymnasium roof at the high school. So a job that tentatively would have been $300,000, we got it for about $150,000. And the best part about that is they warranted everything that was existing underneath it and still gave us the 20-year warranty. And then they'll give us another 20-year warranty and then another 20-year warranty. So theoretically, we'll get 60 years out of that.
And Mr. Palmer, this is the white roof?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, the one that they pour on.
Excuse me?
They pour it on?
It's actually a pour in place type of system. What they do is you put down insulation, you use what they call as a dense deck, which is almost like a concrete type of deck that keeps it solid. Then you put on base coat, you put on a net, like a fiberglass mesh that goes in between the base coat and your top coat. And then what happens is they issue you a warranty. Now, the best part about these warranties, the manufacturer who makes the product also services. So they want to get it done right the first time. They don't want to come back and they don't want to argue about who was the installer, who was the manufacturer, and all this kind of stuff that goes back and forth, because we've been down that road. In this particular case, when they do it, they want it done right because it's going to eat into their profit if they start to have to come back with leaks involved. And I can say this much, since we've applied this product, we haven't had one single leak.
Can you go back to the proposition slide for a minute?
When was it applied, Mr. Palmer?
As far as which one?
What you're saying, we haven't had a leak since we've applied the roof. When was it applied? About how long ago?
3 years ago? Probably about 3 years ago. Yeah. Okay. And I'll be honest with you, you can put down a new EPDM roof and you could probably get a leak within the following week, because if it missed a piece of glue or mastic or any of that type of thing, high wind,
pull it right off.
And in our particular case, look at, right now, we're not doing any emergency roofing projects, so none of these are emergencies. When we did have to do the emergencies, that was at the Suffern High School, and that would be due to wind. And with that being said, we obviously got monies from the insurance company, which then gave us the ability to step up and put a better roofing system on there, which is not going to go anywhere. So there's a lot of positives that we gain from this. And staggering out these roofing projects will not only put us in a position where we are now, where all of a sudden now all the roofs have to be done, or all the roofs now are out of warranty. We've maintained them exceptionally, so that over the next 10 years, we then just take the bits and pieces that had the more leaks than any other ones, and then we go, okay, that's the one that we're going to do. Let's try to get a restoration project out of that one.
Okay. So the proposition we're looking for is to use $2.8 million from the Capital Reserve Fund.
Mm-hmm.
1.5 million of that is for LED.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the other 1.3, how does that split out between the fire alarm upgrades and the roofs?
It's $750,000 for the fire alarm upgrades. And when I say upgrades, I'm not talking about actual fire alarm replacement. What we're doing is we're upgrading the head-end units to meet SCD code and requirements for application.
Okay.
So then we're looking now at the middle school roof and Sloatsburg Library roof, a total of $550,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Are any of these, so the fire alarm has to be done, some of these roofs have to be done, and the LED doesn't have to be done. But I'm telling you right now, if it were me in what I think and how I think that the voters are going to look at this, is I would separate them out into different propositions, because I just have a feeling that the voters are going to turn around and vote this down. So if anything has to be voted on and you need something and it has to be done, I would have those as separate propositions, because I think right now people don't want to spend the money. So if you can leave things out, I would. And things that you have to have done, that's what I would have on the proposition. I wouldn't have LED lighting, because I'm getting a lot of feedback from constituents about how they don't want spending for things that are not necessary. There are people who don't have the money to do it, and they're looking at their own lives, and they're looking at lost businesses, lost jobs, they're on unemployment. And I'm going to say it again. I mean, you're talking about tax increases and all kinds of things. And I just heard from the assessor. He said that the 11.44% that you're using is tentative. He said that you would have to use the adopted budget, which is 11.66, and it could mean millions of dollars that your budget is going to lose compared to the adopted. He said that you should give him a call, and before we vote on this budget, you need to talk to him. And that's what I've been, suggesting all along. That's what I'm saying. Not that he's saying that you should call him. I'm telling you that you need to speak to the assessor. So I shouldn't put words in his mouth. I'm saying that that's what he told me, is that you shouldn't use the tentative budget. You have to use the adopted, because it can make a big difference within the adopted budget when the governor comes down for the assessment.
I think it's also, we need to make clear for people that are watching this and for voters that this 2.8 million on this proposition, if this is approved, doesn't change your taxes at all. This is money that has already been allotted. It's sitting in a reserve fund. This has zero impact on the taxpayer.
Well, if anything, it saves the money over the next year.
And definitely, Matt, you kind of hit the nail on the head with that. And the way that I look at it here too is, okay, these are things that we approved, and we approved into the 17 million and what we're going to do. Luckily, this year, we were able to use the whole 2.8 from the capital. Were we originally going to take the $700,000 out of the budget? We didn't have to do that because I saved money on the other jobs. Right. So that's what helped be able to offset and get us into this situation. The other thing, and Melissa, just, and I'm listening to you on this too. I mean, just to kind of maybe break it down in a smaller term is, let's say, you gave me $1,000, okay? And 4 years from now, I'll give you $250,000 back for 15 years. Would you take the deal? Because that's essentially what it is that we're doing.
I understand that, but right now, you're talking about people who don't have any money. And if you could put that $1,000 off until next year, then I would tell you to do that. Right now, people are scared.
But we're not giving it back to them.
I'm sorry?
That money's in the reserves.
Right, but right now, you also have the loan payments that are up. You could always take that money out and use it towards your loan payments that are up. I mean, you could always transfer things from one reserve to another if you had to. I mean, these are options that are available.
Well, the only problem then with that is you're losing your 47.6% on anything that you spend on the stuff that you need to do. Right.
What do you mean you're losing 47?
That's what we get back.
By transferring it to another reserve, which doesn't pay itself back. This actually, all the money you spend out of this reserve on these capital projects, you get 47.8% back from the state of New York.
Almost half.
I understand that. But right now, I'm trying to save the taxpayers money. You're talking about people.
Okay, but Melissa, are you talking about the optics?
Money because we're spending more on electricity.
But Melissa, are you talking about the optics of this? Is that, wow, we're all in this, bad situation.
Right now is a bad situation.
Yes,
and to tell them that we're going to spend, I don't know if you're getting emails from people and Facebook messages and text messages from your constituents telling you about how they're trying to get unemployment and they're losing jobs and businesses are closing and people can't get PPP loans and jobs are gone and restaurants are gone and people are closing businesses and people are losing their homes and people are asking me, please don't do these LED lighting this year. Please don't do it.
But do they understand that the LED lighting is part of a capital project? It's capital funds that have been already earmarked.
Right.
It's not going to reduce the taxes.
To do the LED lighting does not impact taxes.
It doesn't impact any taxes at all. But what it does do is it actually generates revenue so that we can continue doing more projects.
Right.
And not eat up that $17 million as quick as we normally would have.
Right, but you could also do it next year, and it's just a way that we're not.
Yeah.
Look, it's also the optics of how people feel.
Yes.
And we can use that money towards something else that we can.
You can transfer that money, can't you?
And
Yeah.
then we lose 48% of getting it back.
Understand, but in case there's a situation that comes.
You don't get 48% right off the bat. First of all, the state of New York is not just handing out money. There's so much that the state of New York has lost. So they're not just going to hand you back money at the drop of a hat and say, here's your 48%, there you go. Oh, we lost so much money from COVID-19. We're just going to give you your financial aid from the state.
It's in the law. It's in the law. They have a choice.
You don't have a choice. They have to give you back because that's what your building aid rate ratio is.
They have bondholders.
Oh, okay. If you believe that the state of New York is just going to hand you what they said,
no, they're not handing it.
There's a financial crisis going on. They're not going to hand.
Yes, I do. Foundation aid, I agree. Building aid, I disagree. I've lived through 0809. I've lived through a few of these.
Yeah, the point is, whether New York State pays us back in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, or 24 months, if we do this proposition, it still has no impact to the taxpayer.
Correct.
That's what everybody out there watching and everybody that would be voting on this proposition needs to understand. That this is money that is in a fund, that has already been put in that fund, that is set aside strictly for the use of capital projects. And taxpayers will see no increase as a result of using this $2.8 million.
Right. Well, is that true? Because if you took that money and moved it to another reserve and used that to lower their taxes this year,
wait a minute. We put this money aside.
You can't. Well, I don't believe you can't move money from this fund without a board resolution.
Yes.
They voted on
money, you could do a board resolution, and then you have a board resolution.
No, you can't. No, you can't.
Okay, hold on.
Yes, you can.
Wait,
you voted on it. The taxpayers voted on it. The taxpayers voted on that $10 million.
In May of 2017.
What you would do with that $10 million once again if you want to move it.
Yeah.
So then maybe I misspoke. It's not a board resolution. You need to actually go back to the taxpayers to vote to take that money out of a capital reserve and move it into a general fund.
Okay. Correct. And here's another situation to think about. When you do that again, I'll again remind you and caution you about a structurally balanced budget. A one-shot revenue being used to pay payroll. What do you do the year after when you don't have any more money out of that capital reserve to keep transferring?
Never said to use it for existing expenditures, but saying to use it for debt service if you needed it for debt service or something that's not a one-shot deal. If you needed it for an emergency situation, you have it there. If we want to use something this year and get down the reserves for a certain reason, I think that we leave options open.
You just say like you're not using it so much for that purpose though, Steve. You're using it to offset the difference in the state aid with regard to COVID. You don't know the number that the governor is going to come down with. He's saying it could be anywhere from 20 to 50%. And if you're using your reserves to offset what you would normally get in state aid, that's not a one-shot deal, but you're sort of using it for a rainy day. And if you have the people in the community that want to use it for that purpose rather than putting in LED lighting, you can't just automatically say, well, we're going to lose 47%, because you still have money that you're going to put in that capital reserve later.
All right. I want to take a pause here for a second. Is there more presentation to go through? Yeah, we can kind of come back and discuss this as it relates to the entire budget, but I don't know if there's more still to go through.
This was the final slide before questions, just to tell everybody that this postcard will be going out to every registered voter this week.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Because I guess there's still some people perhaps still want to make comments about the proposition and the 2.8 million. And, ultimately we need to come to a resolution on the budget itself and what we're going to support. So instead of, kind of just throwing everything at it, I think we should start by going around, let everybody have an opportunity to sort of say where they stand.
Mhm.
So, I don't know if I'll kind of go. Don, why don't you go first? Don, I'm going to go around where we would be sitting under normal circumstances.
Okay, just a couple of quick questions. John, I just want to get you on record to say that basically solar panels are only operating at a percentage of what, 20%? In terms
20%. According to the information that I have, the best panels are operating at about 20% efficiency. We've had some other costs, other numbers that came our way, and some of these companies have the best 16% efficiency.
So basically, okay, you're saying these three propositions, okay, that they must be done this year, that we could not possibly put them off for another year, including the LED, the fire system, as well as the two roofs, but that we could basically muddle through, Gorilla Glue, whatever the case may be. But is it possible that we could get another year without putting this budget and this proposition up to the people this year?
Until you have a major leak done,
yeah,
so is a possibility. You'll be paying 4 times the price to repair it.
So you could then go another year.
If you want to take that chance.
Well, we've taken the chance so far, I guess. You have 5 roofs.
It's not under warranty anymore.
All right. Are we
June
still
20th, 2020, it's out of warranty.
Yeah, both of them. Okay. Paul, what were you going to say?
All right. Are we still focused on the capital project?
No, I think what we're trying to do right now is give every board member an opportunity to just sort of ask some questions, maybe give their position on things so that we're not all yelling at the same time.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to yell, but I do want to say that in terms of the three things that we're talking about, the LED, the roofs, and the fire alarm. Of those 3 items, fire alarm is safety. Does anyone disagree?
Well, those all have to be done. That was what he said.
Right.
The fire alarm, there's not even an argument.
Okay,
that just has to be done.
All right, and that's about 750,000, John. Am I correct? Okay, thank you. Okay, the roofs. Okay, the warranty is up. I mean, this is it. And like you said, though I've had cars that have, the warranty, they went south before the warranty, but things are different now, and now the warranty is usually really, really good. But still, I mean, if we have a leaky roof, it's going to be very costly. And why do we want to pay 4 times the amount when right now we're paying, I guess it's about $550,000 for the 2 roofs, approximately. That's what I'm looking at in terms of numbers, right?
And that's correct, Paul, because what we're looking on doing it as a restoration, because the insulation is dry, the majority of it is dry, which then would cost us a lot less to do it as a restoration and still get the 20-year, 40-year, and 60-year out of it.
Okay, so so to me, those are the 2 no-brainers, really. Now, I guess the only perky thing, and I don't mean perky. Hi, happy, I'm perky. No, I mean, but the only perk thing maybe is the LED lighting, though that's a great savings. That would be great to do, but maybe that's something that we can put aside, and that's pretty much more than half of the 2.8 million that we're talking about.
Sure.
All right, so if we're looking to maybe not make it this 2.8 million, but pare it down to about, maybe 1.3, maybe that's optic wise, that might be better. Then we still have that 1.5 million that we're still keeping, and maybe we can do it next year. So it'll go into 2024, and that's when we'll start making the money back or whatever. So I'm just trying to figure something out here.
So personally, I'm in support of the LED, but if it's something that, we're not all completely locked into here, then maybe the compromise is to do what Melissa's saying and have two separate propositions and let people vote on the fire alarms and the roofs as one, which is the necessity, and vote on the LED lights separate as something that is, at least in my opinion, is a benefit and a good use of reserve dollars. But if the appetite's not there, then it's not there.
If I could just step in.
Oh, you're muted.
I'm muted again?
No, Paul is.
I am. All right,
I'm
Tommy,
sorry.
Tommy, before you begin. Yeah, the whole idea of LED lights, it's like, we're going to go get LED lights. It's like this extra thing. And I get it. And I get it, Melissa. And I get the fact that people are saying to you, why do we have to do LED lighting? Yeah, that's like this thing. I mean, yeah, the LED lights are going to last for 22 years. When I put them in my home, my wife and I looked at each other and we said, well, I guess we're never changing these lights again because we're going to be gone, before the lights go out. Or maybe when the lights go out, we are going to be gone, whatever. Okay, but I'm just saying, so maybe it's just that mindset that pretty much people have in general about LED lighting.
Right, but I think it's more than just the optics of LED lights. It's understanding the savings that they truly bring.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
I sort of agree with you. It's not like the new turf field where you could go to this field and say, wow, look at this beautiful field that our kids are playing on. It's not got the rubber in it that could possibly be a carcinogen. It's coconut husk field, and the kids are safe, and that's wonderful. It's not like an aesthetically pleasing thing, but people don't see it. They look up and they see lights. They could care less if it's LED or whatever, but they don't realize that over the course of time, that's going to save them money. I agree with you, Matt. I think that's a lot of the problem with why people maybe against a project like that.
And I see very, very valued points with both sides of that. I really do. Looking at it from the facility standpoint, my standpoint, I know that we've got this 10 million in this, or rather $17 million thing to do over 10 years. My biggest gain is I want to stretch out as much as that money as possible so that we don't have to tap into another capital reserve project, and being able to offset the costs of some of this stuff by using the LED savings. That's just kind of where I'm coming from on that point. But I understand absolutely the other part of that too.
All right. So as it relates to Proposition 2, let's just go around, just everybody kind of give their quick opinion here about how they want to go forward.
I thought Tommy had something to say.
Oh, Tom.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm going to support the proposition as stated here. I think once the people realize that this is not a tax factor to them, I think they can see the light. There's a savings here over the next couple of years that we're going to miss out on, starting with the first light we don't light up. So I would like to see the proposition be put there. Let the people understand just what it says here. No tax levy at any price. I think, John, you did a great job here in getting this together.
And just so you know, so everybody knows, Steve and Teresa asked me the same question, so they were right on point with this stuff.
So you were prepared.
Absolutely.
Hey, John, I just have one other question. Would we still get that 47.8% next year if we did the lights?
Yes.
Yeah, we still get the same percentage back, regardless.
Yeah. Well, currently, yes. Unless the state decides to drop everyone's building aid, which is always now, again, to Melissa's point, a possibility.
And with the current situation, that's more of a reality than anything.
Well, but that's why you want to lock in now. That's one of the reasons to lock in now, to get the higher rate.
You get the higher rate. That'll take you through until
Right.
New York State can change it at any time and go back and change things at any time. So they can change it. You could think that you're locking in the rate and they can change it on you.
All right. So who haven't we really heard? Chris. Chris, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, hey, Chris.
Not to get wordy and edgewise over you guys, but a couple things in regards to the proposition. I do support the proposition as written. I think the cost savings in my mind and the regeneration aspect of the capital reserve fund, I think, is extremely valuable, and I think the taxpayers deserve that. We're getting benefit by upgrading our facilities, and then we're getting the money to regenerate those capital funds. I think it's a win-win situation. I do understand the environment, the economic environment, and if people want to split the proposition, and do the roofs and alarms and do the LEDs separately, I don't have a problem with that, but I do think, as written, I would support this, as the way to go, I think, for the benefit of the taxpayers.
Okay. Angus, what was your position, ultimately? One or two propositions? You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right, good. So I think that we should go forward with it the way it is. It's not a hit to the taxpayer. The money's already earmarked for that. And I think that over the course of time, basically what the information we're getting is we're laying out that 1.5 and we're getting $750,000 back for all intents and purposes.
Right.
And that's basically a quarter of what we're spending. So I think it's a good idea to we're getting back a quarter of the money we're spending, and we're going to, over the course of time, make back everything we've spent with the LED lights in there. So I'm in favor of doing it.
Okay. All right. I think we know what direction we're going to go in with this proposition then. I think it's going to stay as is.
May I suggest something that maybe you put into the proposition, the idea that you would be receiving funds back from the state of $750,000 so that they would understand the reason why, okay, you would want to maybe vote yes on this proposition. I think it needs another.
I don't know that we can word the proposition this way because it is a legal wording, but one of the things that we can certainly do is certainly in the budget hearing on June 2nd, that it will certainly be very clear in that presentation, and we could also maybe even have I'll have John even bring in an LED light, and we'll show some numbers and figures, and we can really hit home with it and sell it. Some way it should be.
People are voting it by mail, and I think there should be that extra line in there.
Mm-hmm. I'll ask the attorney to see what we can do.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Now, in terms of the budget itself, we need to give direction to administration on how we want this budget to move forward so that we can vote on a resolution tomorrow night. Again, I think the best way to do this may just be to go around, give everybody an opportunity to kind of let everyone else know where they stand, and then we can sort of have the discussion around that. So why don't we start at the opposite end? How about Chris? You want to start?
Yeah. So I have a few things to say and maybe a question at the end. I think a lot of this really boils down to one's view of what the tax cert reserve is. Is the tax cert reserve extra money to be used to augment an operating budget, or is it actually an expenditure? Is it something that we put aside for an earmarked use? And I think if that approach is taken, I think people can see the value of what a tax cert reserve is. I think people see it as $22 million of just extra money, but I think it needs to be really clearly stated what a tax cert reserve does. And I don't think, just talking about this with people in the neighborhood, my wife even, it really is not clear what a tax cert reserve fund is. And people view it as extra money. Well, why don't we just take that and balance the budget? What's the downside to that? I think that really needs to be hashed out publicly, because I think a lot of people don't understand what that really is. And before you answer the question, just reviewing these numbers, assuming we go with the max tax levy, I don't think we would ever do this, but let's say we did 2.87%. We would still need a significant use of reserves to get to where we need to go. Like, we're at 85% now, that would still bring us down to about 70%. So I think people need to realize that a slippery slope of using these tax cert reserves, you really are almost unable to make that money up down the road. So I don't know. I mean, these are my observations. I think if Steve wants to answer those questions or comment on what I just said, I think it might be valuable for other people who are listening in too.
I think you put it very well. To explain a tax cert reserve very simply, basically that $22 million, you're being sued for $22 million. That's what it means. You have an asset now that you've set aside of $22 million in case someone wins that lawsuit for $22 million, that you can actually pay them and you don't have to raise real property taxes or borrow to do that. Because if you didn't put that money aside, the only way you can pay them if someone wins a tax cert is, number one, your operating budget would have to increase enormously depending on the size of the claim, or you'd have to borrow and pay interest for who knows how many years to pay it off. That's exactly what a tax cert is. Again, you've got a controller's report out there, and right now there's some new guidance that just came out in May on tax certs from the New York State Controller's Office as well. But again, it's all about risk that as a board and as a community that they're willing to take, or how much money do we actually set aside? Because again, you haven't set aside 100% of that liability of that tax certiorari out there that you could potentially be sued for. And in a lawsuit, you never know how much it will be settled for. You just don't know. Will it settle for 100%? Maybe. Will it settle for 35%? Maybe. That you don't know. I don't know. I won't say I'm an expert on tax certs and where it should be. That's a local decision on your particular values and how much risk you're willing to take and what you think will happen. I mean, it truly is a roll of the dice on that. There's no doubt about it.
So there's no predictor. There's no predictive way to say what the number is going to be.
Well, you can look at what's settled in the past, the way the Controller's Office did. But one of the things that you saw or didn't see in their report was, what were they? Were those tax certiorari's and small claims from residential claims, or were they commercial ones? Because you have two very large commercial ones out there right now that there could be a very good possibility that they would settle for very large amounts.
Right.
I don't know what those.
There's really no way to predict what that number is going to be. So it's really a board member's personal comfort in terms of how they want to be protected, how much protection they want to have.
That's correct.
I think that's fair. Now, Steve, I have a follow-up question. Yeah. You said that there are a couple of large dollar tax certs sitting out there. Mm-hmm. I don't need to know who, but just give me a number for one of them. Are we talking about $500,000, $1 million? What are we talking about?
Teresa, can you give us Teresa, can you unmute and give us just a few?
Just give me one. I mean, just give me a big one.
Here she goes. There you go.
Nope, muted.
There. Don't touch anything.
Okay. Yeah, we have some for several $1 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, like, for example, a few years ago, we had two out there for Novartis. They had just 2 years. We settled one at 100%. then we worked up a deal for the second one with them. So you don't know. We have paid some at 100% before. But we have some, like you're saying, some very large ones out there. And some of these big commercial properties, they're a little bit scary.
Okay. So my follow-up question is, if you had a tax cert hanging out there for $3 million and you settled at 50%, that claim is now settled. Where does that 1.5 million that didn't get awarded go?
So basically, at the end of the year, I kind of put it back into the general fund and then moved the new ones into the tax cert fund.
Okay.
Because like last year, we got 6 million, I think it was $5 million or $6 million more in tax certs.
Okay. So, and this is just so everybody understands, because I don't have a perfect understanding. But when you settle a tax cert for less than what we're holding it for, that balance goes back into our general fund.
Yes.
Is that fair?
Yes, and then, but then use that money to do other.
No, and I get that. I just want to know where that money got transferred once that claim was over.
Yes.
Okay.
So these claims are a yearly process. They get processed and then they get adjudicated, and then the next year comes up, and then is that
we have some of them that are from like 2008. So I just went through this all with the assessor's office in the fall, I believe, and our attorney. And there are some they're very, very old. So what happens is somebody might do a tax cert and they'll do it the next year, the next year, the next year. And it keeps building until some of these are settled. And even if they settle, they still keep going, trying to say, oh, well, that really wasn't low enough. So they build all the time. So this year we'll probably get, like $5 million, like we were saying when we were talking about the balances, we might get $5 million more in tax certs. We might settle some. We have settled some. Obviously, we've made some payments.
All right. So Chris, then, given your position or your opinion on the tax certs, what is your feeling on the budget overall, and
in terms of the tax levy that I would?
Are you, so basically, I think my question is, and this is for everybody, are you comfortable with the budget as proposed, the $144 million budget? And what is your opinion on the levy increase and the associated balance, or the associated funds that would have to be spent? Because ultimately, that's what we've all got to figure out.
Yeah. And, to say this is a difficult decision, I mean, I think it's the understatement of the year. I think there's no good answer. There's no good way around this, taking into, account the economic climate. But I think as reviewed today, I would be comfortable with the amount of the budget at this point. And in terms of a tax levy that I would think takes into account the status of the taxpayers, but also takes into account the status of the district going forward, because I don't think you can look at this as a 6 to 12 month issue. I think we got to make sure that we plan ahead even further and not dig ourselves too much of a hole with this tax cert thing. So I would be in between possibly a 1.25, 1.75. I think possibly a 2, but in that maybe a 1.5 average range.
Okay,
would sort of be my comfort level in terms of a amount, with that.
All right.
So
okay. I know it's tough to go first.
No, I mean it's fine. But again, with conversation and discussion, that certainly can change. But that's right. My opinion at this moment.
All right. Okay.
And I just want to say, I think it's important that we can't just look at this year. We gotta really take into account next year and the year after, because that's.
And I certainly echo that. Given the situation we're in, I think we need to be very careful not to get emotional or overlook. No, I shouldn't say overlook, but not to only look at this tax season and this budget, because whatever we do tomorrow, and whatever gets voted on the 9th has implications for the next 2, 3, 4 years if we're going to start digging ourselves a hole that might be very difficult to get out of. So I agree with you there. Melissa, you would technically be the next one sitting over there if we were going around. So I'll let you.
No, it's not.
No. I was kind of picturing how we sit in the boardroom, at a meeting.
Oh, I'm in the executive session, sorry.
No, you're not an executive, you're in public.
Sorry.
But it's the only way in my mind that I can keep track of everybody, so.
Well, my opinion has been my opinion from the beginning. The only thing that really scares me is that the assessed values, it's using 11.44% for the assessed values. So I think that we're using a tentative value for the assessments and not the 2020 tentative assessed roll. You really have to use the adopted roll because you're going to have millions of dollars off between what can happen between the tentative budget for the assessed roll and what the adopted budget is for the governor's for the government's assessments, what his equalization rate is. So that's going to make a big difference in the numbers, a huge difference. So that's something that we really have to think about. So Steve, are you going to talk to Scott tomorrow, Scott Shedler?
I will gladly talk to Scott. I would just point out that our tax levy will be based on that tentative roll when it's done. That's why we don't usually like to do these figures, is because yes, they are a moving target, because when that tentative roll is finally done and grievance day is over, yes, our tax levy then will be spread across that final roll when it's done. Right. That's why these rates don't come out until the end of August. For the 1920 taxes that you see, those property taxes, I did use the actual roll for 1920 that we're in right now. I use the tentative rates for 2021 because that's all we have out there to go by. Right. We don't usually like to do that, but we have to, because that roll could be exactly, it could end up exactly the way it is now, a lot less, who knows? And that's why I said we don't know.
He would have let you use the tentative, the 11.44. That's what he's saying.
All I can say is I've been doing this for 20 years and we've never used this year's roll to try to do next year's taxes, ever. But I'll talk to him. I'll gladly talk to him. Not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what he's saying, because that is off. So he's saying that could potentially be off by a lot. So that scares me, because you guys are using.
I would have to disagree, because the rate change is $2.65, and going from 11.44 to 11.66 over a roll that has so many millions of dollars. No, maybe a few cents, a few dollars, maybe on that sheet that you see on your screen right now, but not. You're only talking about $142.
Okay. Well, talk to him tomorrow.
So it can't change by hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars. It can change by maybe a few dollars. That's it.
Okay. So, I mean, taking that into account, though, Melissa, what is your opinion on the budget as a whole?
My opinion on the budget has always been the same. I think that you need to have a zero or negative budget. I mean, you didn't even put in a 0.5% increase. So anything I say has always been ignored. So I'm like
well, that's not true. That's just on this slide. If it was a negative % levy increase, there would be no increase in dollars. And the other slide that's here does have what the 0% would mean for the reserves.
For here, right? You have a 0%, but even if it was like a negative 1%, you're not showing, what it looks like, or anything like that. So you're showing the levy, so it's I just feel like I speak and it's.
So I mean, just obviously, and I know you've said this before, but just for the record, you are not in favor of any increase whatsoever.
None whatsoever.
And are you okay with the budget itself as proposed, the $144 million budget? Are you comfortable with the budget as presented? Forget how we were going to pay for it for a minute, and what you're using for reserves or levies. Are you comfortable with the budget as presented?
I haven't seen the whole budget. I haven't gotten the detail. So how can I be okay with the whole budget? I never got all the detail. I haven't seen line by line of the whole budget. I've gotten the same exact package every single time we've gone over the whole budget. I even offered to go in and roll up my sleeves, but I wasn't. This is whatever the public has seen is the same thing I've seen. The same thing as the public. What board members get is the same thing as the public. So I don't know. So if the public thinks that the board gets anything special, we don't. Okay. Is there anything else that you want to add? No, I think that's about it. Okay. Paul?
Okay, Steve, could you go to the slide? Maybe go back one and then it may be another one. I think if you go back, no, that was another one. Go back another one, I'm sorry. Definitely not that one. There was another one. No, go forward. Go forward. Don't go back. Go forward. Sorry, Steve. Thought there was another one. I guess, okay. Go back to that one. Stop. Good, thank you. Ooh. You had it for a second. That's it, thank you. Okay. Okay, so at 1.5%, it's a total of 2.9 out of that, and 3.5 out of the tax cert. So, okay. I'm happy with the total budget number. I agree with Melissa. I would like to get maybe a little bit deeper into what makes up the 144 million and change. I like to maybe see more specifics. No. I mean, really, almost like, okay, what is Sloatsburg's budget? What is school by school, line by line, almost, but not completely, because my eyes are getting older. I know, but I'm okay with the final number. All right, and now it's a question of the percentage. And I know you have 2 and 1.5, and then 1 and then 0.5, and 1.5 is okay, but I think a little bit lower might even be better. And I'm almost thinking like 1.25, even though that's not one of the figures that you have out there. Am I muted, or can everyone hear?
No.
All right. Okay, good. Because I'm just hearing myself speak, and I'm surprised that my wife isn't telling me to keep quiet, but you can't. So I would almost go with like a 1.25. Take, I guess, another approximately 240,000 from the tax cert, and to maybe make it a 1.25 increase. Just to get it closer to that 1, but I think 1 we just wouldn't. It just wouldn't help, because as Matt said, we have to look ahead to the future, and next year. I mean, if we think we're having trouble now, next year could be worse, and the year after that hopefully will not be worse. And I'm not saying that next year should be worse, but it could be. And I would like to put in my vote that if I could have a 1.25, I'd be very happy with that. But I'm okay with the 144, 33,814.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to add before we move on?
Yeah, guys, you're not buying lottery tickets. I can tell. Yeah, that's how we have to do it.
You have to leave the house to buy a lottery ticket, though.
No, you print them up yourself, and then you do your own drawing, and you win. It's just that simple.
All right, Angus?
I think we skipped a few people between me and Paul, didn't we?
Is he?
No.
Yeah, Tommy goes, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tommy, you're right. Sorry about that.
That's all right. You just woke me up.
Well, you skipped yourself too, Matt.
Well, I'll go last.
Oh.
Okay, yes, I'm fine with the 1.44 budget. Last year, I didn't want to open up the reserves. I'm still under that impression. I do have a question for Steve. Steve, with the budget, with 2% increase at the 1.44 of assessed house at $53,000 assessment is going to cost the taxpayer roughly $142 increase. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct.
Okay. Again, I'm more worried down the road. I know we have an issue here possibly with the governor deregulating some property up here in the Torn. I could support a 1.50 to 2.0 budget.
You mean tax levy increase?
A tax levy increase between 1.5 and 2.0. I just hate going into the reserves with the unknown what we have coming down the road tomorrow. I'm just not comfortable spending that money.
Okay. Do you have anything else that you want to add?
No, I'm good. I'm good. No, thanks, guys.
All right. Now it's your turn, Angus.
I don't think that we are really thinking about what's actually going on around us. You know, a lot of people that live in this district, you know, in particular, this is one of the hotbeds for this COVID virus. And a lot of people lost the breadwinners in their family. A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people even lost their homes, you know, and need help. There's people that can't put food on the table in this district. To say that you want to raise their taxes, you know, 2% is, to me, cruel. You know, I think that there should be some sort of increase. I wouldn't think it should be above 1% at all, but that's where I stand on it.
All right, so you're settling around the 1% as a comfort level,
or less. I mean, I think that to go above 1%, I mean, you're putting a lot of pressure on people, you know, that can't afford the taxes they're paying, you know, and now you're making them pay more, you know. But
do you have any reservations or concerns about the budget as a whole, or are you comfortable with the budget as presented as a whole?
Well, with regard to that, I'm sort of in agreement with Melissa and Paul that we haven't even really seen a real detailed budget in terms of what people are spending building by building or anything like that. You know, we haven't really seen any sort of itemized, you know, breakdown, anything like that. So I think that we still need more information.
Okay. All right. Do you have anything else you want to?
Honest, I mean, like, how are we even going to see that when you expect us to vote tomorrow?
Hold on. Wait. Let's give everybody an opportunity, and then we can go back.
Well, I would yield my time to Miss Rima because we're sort of the same reservations.
How about you yield your time to Mr. Cairns?
Well, how about I'll ask the same question she does. How are we going to see the information when we're expected to vote on this tomorrow? You know, we're having a special meeting for a budget vote.
You have to do it. Well, listen, we have to do it tomorrow because we need the time to get the ballots done. We couldn't wait. So that's why we called the special meeting for tomorrow. That's why we're having the workshop tonight. And that's why we didn't do them on the same day, so that we have a day to finalize anything we need to finalize. So if there's information that can be provided to the board via email from Steve or from administration, Lee, I would think that can get done to the best of everybody's ability.
We will give us the ability. Of course, it would have been helpful to have the request for more detail prior to. Oh, sorry. We'll do what we can tomorrow. We'll get you what we can tomorrow. Would have been helpful before tonight to have the request.
Well, in fairness, we were supposed to have another week before the meeting. So,
yeah, and we always have the detailed budget.
Well, the state is dictating that, not us.
well, it's not. I think we're all in us. It's not the administration. It's not certain members on the board. We're all in this together.
Well, I know. What I'm saying is the state is dictating our new timelines, not us, not administration or the board. That's my point. And that's why we're having this meeting today and tomorrow and not next week.
Well, like I said, it would have been nice to have those numbers.
Okay.
Mr. Carnes has made several requests.
Okay. So as Lee said, they will get us whatever they can between now and or not now, but after this meeting and when we have to vote tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Don?
Okay, just to make sure, last week I asked Mrs. Weber if Steve could give us more in-depth numbers. For example, I had mentioned, for example, utility savings, different things like that, spring conference savings, RCC rental, spring musical costs, in terms of all those different things that, they didn't use the money, but, where is that money? How much was it saved? So, I had asked, I guess about a month ago, about taking a razor blade to the budget, but I don't think we really took a razor blade at all to it. So I think the 144 is still a little bit high. I think we really should try to show the public that we're really in this all together. The other question I know Paul Shapiro had asked at 2 meetings ago was, what about the SEA, about, putting in a freeze for this year? Was there any discussion with the SEA to say, you know what, we're in this together. We can, maybe not do our increments this year because of the situation. Number two, most of you are speaking about down the road, years in the future, which is great, but I think we really have to think about today. And today is a horrible situation. Some people say you had the extra funds for the rainy day. I think Angus had said that one time, but it's really a tsunami at this point. May I just, I jotted down a couple of things with regard to trying to have a zero budget and try to reduce it. Number one, most people voting on the school budget this year do not have children in the district. They do it because they want to support the school district. But if you're going to increase the taxes on them, I don't think they're going to support it. Number two, as you said, we have too many senior citizens who can't afford a tax increase. I think Melissa has mentioned that a number of times, and I think that's true. Number three, now that we have a number of Suffernites who have been out of work because of the corona impact, they are losing their jobs, and they may lose their jobs altogether. Their jobs might never, ever come back. So, there are a number of houses for sale in the town area, in this school district. I think there's going to be more of those. And unfortunately, and the other reason is that the local fire department and the police departments are now basically collecting food for people in the Suffern area who can't really put food on the table for themselves because they're unemployed. So again, you're asking for a tax increase at this point. The other reason is that there are a number of families who send their children to private schools, which they have the right to do, and they've always been paying the public taxes. Okay, at this point, you're asking them to increase their pay for the public schools when their children really do not benefit from them. So with all those different reasons, I really think that you're sending out a ballot, okay? And the people, I think, probably will not vote for a budget that is higher than it was before. I think, as Melissa said, it should be really a zero. And really within that, hopefully we could even get it down a little further. It's in the best interest, I think, of everyone. I would hope everyone listening to the discussion tonight on the budget would then send in their comments, call Mrs. Weber or whatever the case may be. But I just don't think that we really have everything put down here. Okay, I think 144 is still too high. A number of things in that budget we discussed, in terms of paying people who will not be doing their jobs this year and so forth. I just don't think we have it at this point, and it's be really difficult if we do not have really a full budget that we could look at and see if there could be some cuts made. Zero and below that.
Okay. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, has Mrs. Zipper spoken to the SEA with regard to maybe postponing their increase in salary this year, since we're all in it together?
I'm sorry, was that a question for who?
Lee Weber.
No, I did not. Pay freezes are hardly ever done in the midst of a contract. They are usually, when they are done during negotiations. We have a contract with the SEA that says this is what they're going to get over the next several years.
But you haven't spoken to them about the possibility of saying, in this situation, could the SEA understand why we need to make some cuts rather than cutting teachers?
No.
That doesn't make sense to me.
My honest answer, I had a conversation with them.
You will?
If you would like me to, I will call Mr. Canty tomorrow and we'll have that conversation with him. I will give you that information tomorrow night.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Matt, you're up.
All right. I'm going to go back to something Chris said, because I think it, for me, is one of the most important things about this budget. The use of reserves is, to me, a very frightening perspective. It would ultimately put us into a hole, and I know Steve talked about this at one of the last budget workshops. It puts the district in a hole that is very difficult to get out of. So, for example, if we went with a 1% levy increase, we would be looking at the use of $4.3 million of reserves. Now, something Steve said before that I want to reiterate, because I don't know if everybody heard it, is that approximately $800,000 out of that potential 4.3 would come from employee retirement, insurance, unemployment, and benefits. So that initial, basically the first amount of money you're using isn't really coming out of the reserves. They're not coming out of the tax cert fund. However, when you start to then use, I think Steve's analogy was, it's playing cleanup. So you're going to use all that other stuff first, and then when you need more money, you're taking it out of the tax cert fund. And we've had tax cert discussions for years. Every year I've been on this board, we've talked about tax certs in one way or another. And I think we all agree that holding it 100% was not the right thing to do. We've lowered that to about 85 as of now. I think there's, I know we've talked in the past, and I think that there is some maybe light agreement on maybe capping that number around 70 to 75. Even to do that, we would have to bust the tax cap, which is not going to, obviously we're not going to do that. But again, my fear is that when you use $4 million to fill a budget hole, which is essentially one-time revenue, how do you fund that again next year? So we're currently putting forth a budget of $144 million. Let's say next year's budget is $146 million because budgets do tend to go up every year. You now have, the way that I look at it, a $6 million hole. You have the $2 million that the budget is increasing, plus the $4 million that you paid for this budget with a one-time revenue. So that $4 million isn't coming in again next year, which means you've now dug yourself a hole that is extremely difficult to get out of. I have extreme fear about doing that. Personally, I sort of agree with Chris, with Tommy. I think that for what the levy increase costs per, I don't know if I should say per household or per taxpayer, I guess per taxpayer. And Steve can tell me if I'm wrong. You're talking about somewhere between $90 and $140 annualized. So again, you're talking about an average of somewhere between $9 and $12 per month. I fully understand what's happening with this economy, how it's impacting families, not just in our district, but all over the county and the state. And that being said, I do want to ask Steve, do you have the budget or the levy increases that are going to be proposed by other districts in the county, just as a comparison to where we're looking, where we may land? Are any districts going with zeros or ones, or are they going all the way up to the cap?
We have, we actually did a poll yesterday and today, and 7 districts responded. One district came out at a 0% tax levy. The rest went from 1.4 all the way up to 2.82. The average of all 7 other districts was 1.87% tax levy. Their budget increase average of those districts was 2.72%. And the district that came out with a 0 was going up over 2% their budget.
And if you go back to the slide, what is our budget increase? 1.99?
1.99.
Okay. Okay, so
we're the second lowest.
Okay. So again, my feeling is that
the lowest tax levy increase is 1.5 to 2%. We would be the lowest, other than the 1.0.
So I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
We would be the lowest tax levy increase despite the 1.0.
Who has the 1.0?
I'm sorry, I'm not at liberty to share that. I don't know that it's public information.
Okay, that's
two districts at 0.
No.
Okay.
I have 1. And no, I won't comment.
Okay, you shouldn't, I don't want to put you in that position.
Nope. Sorry.
Okay. So again, I mean, to just clarify my point, I would be comfortable with a 1.5 or even a 2, because I believe that we need to push through this year. We are a strong district. We are financially stable, but we cannot whittle away our reserves out of a crisis that is causing us to only look over the next hill. We need to make sure that we are prepared to deal with whatever comes our way for the next 2 years, 4 years, and that we don't dig ourselves a hole that we just simply will not be able to get out of. So that's where I am. So all that being said, if I go back and look at the 7 board members, there are 2 people who would like a 0. There are.
I have a question.
Yes.
The use of reserves, this is not just reserves, but like, is this going to be like the savings of the transportation that you're going to have from this year of $2 million that you think that you're going to have, like some of that reserve balance that you're going to have that would fall to the bottom line? I mean, like, this isn't just going to be coming out of your tax tertiary balance. Like, some of this, it could come out of whatever balance you're going to have, like when we were talking about savings that you're going to have.
Yes, it could.
You're absolutely correct, Melissa. And that's why we said with the tax tertiary, there's a very, very limited chance that we would have to be draining that tax tertiary, because we do end up usually our annual budgets end up in a surplus. And that surplus would be used for operations instead of pulling from reserves. We'll only pull from the reserves when and if we have to.
Right. So you really,
you're absolutely correct.
Saying that you're going to use 4.6, but you really wouldn't be using 4.6.
We're already appropriating 3.1 million of fund balance as a one shot already. But yes, you're absolutely correct. Anything over and above that,
that you're saying that you're going to appropriate really isn't fund balance that you appropriate, because at the end of the day, even last year you only used 900,000, and that's why it's not really a fund balance that you appropriate. You end up not using that fund balance every year. So if you did use that fund balance, it would be okay, because you really just fund the tertiary. What I always say is that you fund the tertiary and then you use that 4% in the fund balance anyway. Like, you have that fund balance that you use the 4%, you fund that, and then you use the other parts to fund the reserves, whatever you have left over.
You're absolutely correct. And that's why we were saying it. And that's
without putting more money in those reserves, you could fund that into your fund, into your balance sheet, into your expenditures for the next year, and not have to touch any of your reserves. Really.
Again, then you've drained your reserves. You haven't put anything back into them for the future, as Matt was saying. And that's why I was saying
you're not draining that.
I did. And that's why I talked about as far as depending on how we end the year, will be the tax tertiary.
That's what I'm saying, Steve. You save the money this year. You're not draining the reserves. You save that money, so you're not draining the reserves.
Didn't we have $1 billion left over this year?
Transportation. You save that money in transportation. That's $2 million that we didn't use this year. How is that draining your reserve?
Well, that transportation money is not guaranteed. We don't know we're getting $2 million back. That's just what we have left to spend if we have to. We don't know if we're going to be able to take that money back yet or not.
What are you talking about? You didn't use it.
That's what I said. That's what I'm talking about.
$2.6 million from transportation is an unknown from the state. The state has not indicated yet if they're going to require us to pay out our contract. And if we don't, will that money be aidable? So normally, if we spent that 2.6 million, like in a normal school year, we would get that same 48% back. So we would get about 1.3 million back in aid. If we don't, and the state hasn't decided yet. They have not given us an official directive yet about what we're doing with the transportation money. So that's why it's in the third column, because it's the unknown column.
Okay, I'm talking about things that we actually saved within our budget that we have not used.
Right, which I believe is about, what, $500,000?
Thought it was like
that was some of the additional costs. It was about that.
But there's other monies, this is something that Don keeps talking about, that there's monies that we've actually saved. There has to be utility bills that we've actually saved, and you can't tell me that's $20,000, because I've done the books for a mall, and just 1 month of utilities in a mall, which is the same thing as probably a school building. These are huge utility bills that we're saving in the school that we're not using the utilities. So it has to be big money. You know, this is not small potatoes. So, I mean, there has to be big money that we're saving. If you add it all up, at the end of the day, we're going to have more than just our normal $3 million or $5 million that we have at the end of the day in the fund balance. So that's why I want to see line by line, and Don's been asking, like, what do we think that we're going to save at the end of the day? Because last year we had a fund balance left over. There's always money that we say that we're going to use when we're doing the budget, that 3.1 million. I mean, this is why the state of New York dinged you, because when we're doing the budget, they say that we're going to have a fund balance that we're going to use. And then we don't use it, which I can't understand why they would ding you for that. They should be congratulating you. I know, Matt, you don't want us making any more comments, but I mean,
no, it's not that. I just, we need to work.
Vote on something.
We need to listen. We need to work towards coming to a consensus. That's all I'm trying to say.
How do you come to a consensus when you don't have all the information?
Well,
and this is just like, okay, let's spend the taxpayers' money.
Let me put it this way.
Let's give everybody raises. Let's spend
obviously,
the money. Okay, I'll vote for that.
Okay, good. We obviously, we know your position. Okay, and I'm not saying that to belittle you, but we know you don't want any increase. I know you're a 0%, and you're entitled to that. I'm not trying to sway you any which way, but as a board of 7, we need to come up to we need a consensus among at least the majority so that we know what we're going to vote on.
But Matt, what she's saying to you is you have 4 people on this board that said to you, we don't have enough information. And now you're asking for a consensus on something. It's not fair to ask for that.
Okay.
And this isn't the first time we've heard it.
Then we will just get something to vote on tomorrow. I mean, that's the way this is going to work. But we have to vote on this tomorrow because we have to get the ballots done.
Right.
So we can either try to agree on a number that we're comfortable with. You'll get whatever information you can get from the administration between now and tomorrow night. But to sit and sort of argue the same points over and over doesn't get us anywhere.
But the point is, Ms. Weber just said, well, it would have been nice to have this information earlier. Don has been asking for this information for the last 3 meetings and not gotten anything other than, what was it, a $20,000 or $30,000 line item?
You're muted, Lee.
There's 2 different pieces of things. Don has been asking for our savings. That was provided to you, I don't know, sometime in the last week, losing a little track of time. We provided to you in the last week. He came back with some additional questions, many of which were already included in that, and some of which are very small numbers. For instance, conferences. Conferences in the spring, we have very few conferences. They tend to be BOCEs, so there's 8 on them anyway. I mean, the amount of dollars spent, in many cases, our teachers are still participating in conferences remotely. So all of that is going to come to a very small number.
That's just one example he was using, because that's.
I'm going to give you a couple others. Musicals. John talked about musicals. Actually, our musicals are going to end up, we're going to lose money on our musicals, not save money, because we spent the money on the rights. In the case of the high school musical, we spent the money on the costumes. We spent the money on a lot of things, and we didn't get to hold the show, the middle school and the high school. The way we make back our money is through ticket sales. So we now have to absorb that cost because we had to pay out everything and didn't have the opportunity to perform the show. Our poor students didn't get to perform, but also we didn't have the revenue that comes with the ticket sales, which is the main source of revenue. So yes, are there some little things like that here and there? Yes. That information, though, is very different than asking for the line by line of the 144 million. Tonight is the first time we were asking in a budget workshop for a line by line of the 144 million. That's the point I was trying to make.
I don't think anybody asked you for that. I think people asked you for building breakdowns and things like that. So it wasn't line items.
Well, there was a request tonight for line items.
Well, Melissa was asking previously to this.
I don't recall that. I'll go back and listen to all the workshops, but I don't actually recall that. But as I said, we will work on getting you what we can tomorrow. But again, we're talking about, 20,000 here, 8,000 here. What number do you want? If you don't want 1.033,
all those numbers add up to hundred thousands of dollars. Okay?
yes, all of them do. But remember where we started, Steve, if you could go back to the proposal number 5 screen. So remember where we started, our current budget, where our first proposal was, and all of the deductions we've made, they're all here for you. These are the places that, as you said, go back and get more, go back and find more, go back and find more. We've done that, and we found $2 million.
Yeah, but then transportation went up by a couple of $100,000. Instead of saving.
Yes, transportation went up. We have more students going to other schools outside of our district. We have more students and more schools.
Yeah, transportation isn't something I don't think transportation is an item that we can whittle away at.
The budget at all, like not even like, oh, the savings that we're going to save, we're going to use fund balance. That just stayed at 3.1. Like it didn't go up at all. Like it's just the same amount that you used last year. It's not like thinking outside the box and what are we going to do? I mean, like nothing's changed. This is what Don was saying. Like none of that changed. None of the savings that we got from this year changed our budget at all. Like even the salaries, like were the salaries incorporated from this early retirement, or did that not come out?
Yes, they're right here in the 275,000 in proposal number 5. That's where that number came from, the retirement incentive.
Well, what is the other 25,000 that's below that?
That's not our money that he offered up last meeting.
Yeah,
I couldn't hear you.
That the PR marketing
for 25,000, which I said take out. It's too expensive at this point. My idea is, basically when I've been involved in foundation budget and so forth, we saw every single item. Okay, I know this is a large budget, but it just seems like no one's really gone into it and pared it down as much as possible. Okay, so you're saying in terms of the spring musical costs. Okay, I understand that, but you have teachers on duty there that you're paying. You have security.
That's all reflected in the savings that were already provided to you. That was all included in that.
And where?
In the savings that were provided to you, I sent it out about a week ago.
Not in the spring musical.
It wasn't out for individual events. It was a total. I think it was 50,000 less for security. Was it 50 or something?
Yes, 50 for security.
50,000, which I'm not used to having like large numbers like that where it can't be broken down. So I know exactly what the 50,000 is going for. Okay, that's my point. Is it the RCC graduation? Is it 2,400 that you usually pay for the field house?
So as I indicated in my email to you, whatever alternatives to graduation we have will be more expensive than we normally pay for RCC.
Right, but that would be an additional expense on the other end. You're not telling us what we're saving on not going to RCC.
So we're saving a little bit on RCC, and we did have $10,000 additional for alternative graduation expenses. So that was also included in that listing I gave you.
That I understand, but I'd like to see what we're saving, which would be, I think 2,400 from RCC. It's in the thing that you sent me, there's no listing there. It says RCC rental and it's blank.
Don, would a $20,000 or $30,000 swing either way change the way you feel about a 0% tax levy increase?
No, my point is that I think there's $20,000 or $30,000 in various different lines that you have to look at. Okay, and see if you could, part it down even more. Okay, that's my point. I think it's too high for here's my question for you, Matt. Let's just say, okay, we've had all these different scenarios of everything. What happens if the budget goes out to the people and they vote no on it? What's our next step?
Well, the next step is you go back and you prepare a new budget and you go out for a second vote.
Right.
That's what happens.
Right.
Steve, can you address that?
Personally, I can't work that way. I can't live in fear that it might get voted down. I've got a job to do what I think is right for the district and for the students and for the taxpayers and for all the programs that we offer and for the teachers that we pay. So my feeling is what I believe is right is to put out this budget with a levy of around 1.5 to 2. And if it gets voted down, I can't stop that. But okay, I know what I'm doing what I believe is right.
All the reasons I've listed for you, okay, are you not concerned that there's a number of people who will look at this and say, we just, we'd love to support the district, but we can't at this point. My idea is if you're coming in with a zero budget, okay, you're basically telling the district, you're showing them that you're really, really trying to keep it as low as possible and to get them to support it. Okay, that's the main.
Listen, I'm not saying that I don't understand where you're coming from. Okay, I do. I just don't agree. It's just not the way that I'm looking at it. That's not my feeling or philosophy about this.
Can I just provide some information about the revote, because this year is different?
Melissa has her hand up.
And typically, can I just talk about process for a minute? Typically, in a typical year, we would actually be voting next week. In a normal year, we would vote in May. If the budget got voted down, you have an opportunity to re-vote in June. And if it didn't pass again, you would go to a contingency vote. And we know that's happened to our neighbors to the east. We know that's happened before. This year, because of the lateness of the budget, there may not be an opportunity to re-vote, which would require us to go right from the budget, possibly re-vote on June 23rd when the primaries are, and then our budget would be mixed up. And then what happens?
So then let's
go to a contingency. Go back. Right? Is that what would happen, Mr. Schleicher? We go to a contingency budget?
I think we have to, okay, I know that Melissa wants to speak, but I think that we have to once again, as we've been doing this entire 10 weeks, eight weeks, whatever, we have to wait for the direction of not only the governor, but what, the state ed department is going to tell us. So our discussing it is great, but.
Right. And unfortunately, we don't have the time to wait for all their information because we still have to put a budget out to vote on.
Right. But I know that Melissa did have her hand up, so I'm going to shut up.
I just wanted to ask, within the revenues, do we include the increases for out of town tuitions? Do we include an increase for other items within the budget? How were those budget numbers done when Steve, you did the budget?
Is Steve still?
Yes, I'll ask Teresa to chime in too. Yes, okay. all of those things are included in our revenues here, as you see.
So what did you increase the out-of-town tuitions to?
I don't know. Teresa has that breakdown. In a $144 million budget sitting here tonight, I'll be quite honest with you, I can't sit here and rattle that off the top of my head.
Yeah, we really didn't put an increase in for that. It's not a large number here. And when we looked at this, maybe it was 5 or 6 years ago, there was a certain number that people wouldn't come here. So if we raise that too much, you're going to lose people from coming here because they can go to the other private schools in the area, not private, but let's say the Albertus, the Don Bosco. They would go there instead of come here where they would get the additional transportation. So when we went through this, we did surveys, we did a big analysis to come up with a number of tuition that would bring some people in here. So we are getting some income without really that much cost to us because we already have the places for them here. As far as some of the other things, health services, we reduced that because we have less of our children now in private schools here. In East Ramapo. Less East Ramapo children here, so we're not getting the income from charging out health services that we used to. Interest even $300,000 is a little scary because you know what the interest rates are. So, I mean, and the bulk of our money is in, even the unclassified revenue is a little scary because we don't know what leftover money BOCE is going to have or what they're going to pay. So you have to do an analysis based on the information that you have, but like things like tuition are such a small number, it's not going to affect this budget that much either way.
I understand that, but I just want to understand when you did this, these surveys, who did you send these surveys to?
This was something that was done not by me specifically. This was the former assistant superintendent for business. And they went through, they did a big analysis. They had a lot of people together and we looked at all the different tuitions and what people would pay. Because remember, they're not getting transportation. So that was a big thing for people because we cannot transport their children for this. So if you start to charge more than an Albertus, more than a Don Bosco, they'd rather send their kids there where they can get that transportation. And again, it's not that much money here. We don't have that many students. Maybe Larry could chime in on how many students we have. I don't know off the top of my head, or someone does, but it's not that many students that's going to make that big a difference.
Right. Isn't it like
that? And you're still taking a chance of losing kids.
You don't automatically get transportation to those schools. It goes by how far you live from the school.
15 miles. So most of these people will pick a school where 15 miles is pretty far here. Time-wise, it's hard to get around this county, but 15 miles takes you pretty far.
Right, but not everybody is going to send their kid to Albertus or to Don Bosco. So
agreed. But when we looked at it, this is what we took into account. What would be the number that would get us some revenue without losing these kids?
Listen,
what does Clarkstown
you did a survey last year
for people coming to their school from out of district?
Do they even do that anymore? I'm not sure.
I don't even know if they do that.
No, I don't think they do.
Are there other schools in the district that they're in the county that do it?
I don't believe so. I think Clarkstown was the only one for years, and I don't believe they do it anymore.
Melissa, didn't you do a survey last year for us?
I did it when I first joined the board. The first night that I was on the board, I showed what other schools were charging for private schools versus Catholic schools in the area. And the Catholic schools were just as much as we were, but again, that they have different reasons why they're charging less. And private schools are way more expensive. And I don't think it's fair for people who are paying taxes that are sending their kids to schools and that live here and pay the taxes. But that's a whole nother story. But it's just extra revenue that we could be putting into our budget that can offset people's taxes.
But we don't know that we will keep those kids, so that if we raise the tuition too much, we might actually lose some of the revenue we already have.
I doubt we would lose some of that revenue.
So Teresa, we have about the 15 or 20 students we have right now. I know of at least 3 of them who had financial difficulties this year. Mm-hmm. 3 of our out-of-district families who were like on the verge of not coming if they couldn't, make their payment.
Who were some of our residents?
No, our non-resident. I'm talking about our non-resident families.
So are our residents. So our residents are getting an increase in their taxes. So,
yeah. And in July at the reorg, you'll on the new tuition, whatever it is. Absolutely.
Okay, let's try to pull this back in. Chris, you were at a 1.5.
Yeah.
Okay.
It could be 1.25 to 1.5. I mean, I think.
Okay. Tom, I know you're 1.5 to 2. Angus, you were like a 1.
Or less, yeah.
Is 1 your cap?
I would say that's as high as I would vote for.
Okay. Paul, you were at a 1.25.
Which wasn't there, but if you add about 275,000 to that table that we saw that was up there, that would be pretty much what the 1.25 would be. I think, give or take $10,000 between the 1 and the 1.5. If you added another 275,000, taking that of the tax cert, that would be the figure. But listen, how can you not feel for the people who have lost jobs, who may find other jobs that may pay less or may pay more or may pay the same, or for the people who lost their business, completely different than that, and for families that are struggling. When you really think about it, we're talking about, okay, it could be $39, it could be $90 for the year, but just forget about that amount increase. They still have to pay taxes. They still have to pay school taxes. And that's the number that they're looking at. They're not looking at the increase so much. They're looking at, no matter what, they still have to pay the $2,200 or the $3,400 or whatever the figure is that they pay. They still have to pay that. And they may not be able to. So then they're going to be leaving, or they're going to be looking to leave, or they'll be scaling down if they can, or they may just say, hey, I'm just out of here. This is tough. This is extremely tough. And we all have, I'll use a word that I don't normally use, rachmanus. Okay? Is that the right word, Melissa?
I can't even pronounce that word.
Yeah, don't even try.
Okay, but anyway, you feel for them. This isn't something that's happening to people, 1,000 miles from here. This is things that are happening to people across the street and right next door, or who live above you or below you or wherever. This is awful. This sucks. Let's put it out there. And I know people are listening, and I shouldn't use the word suck. Well, you know what? It does suck. This is absolutely awful. And if there was a way to fix it, we would find a way. There's 7 people here. There's an acting superintendent. There's someone who's in charge of money. There's a guy who knows roofs. And is it roofs or roofs? I just want to know the difference between the two. I don't know.
Yeah, I kept writing it down both ways.
Okay, all right. So
I don't know.
So there's 15 people on this call, or whatever the number is. People who are bright. Not speaking for myself. People who are bright and have experience and who have lived years, and we have to find something that can change the direction and can help people. And I feel helpless. I really do.
Can I say one thing?
Mm-hmm. You can say 2 things.
We were talking about before about the LED lighting, how it's only $1.5 million, right? The difference between 1% and 2% is $1.1 million. So if we were to shelve that for a year, and maybe people may be in a situation next year where they can handle a tax increase, but you're in the midst right now of a pandemic. I mean, I think that if we, sort of lower things now, give people the idea and let them see that we're trying to help because we understand the way that they're suffering at this point, and just try to move forward in this. I mean, you're talking about $1.1 million, according to Mr. Schleicher's table.
Well, but remember, the LED light has nothing to do with this.
It comes out of the capital fund.
That's a capital fund. That's got nothing to do with this.
Right, but what I'm saying is we said that we could also put that out for a vote. So if you put that out for a vote, let people make the decision. Look, you could either save money on your taxes, or you can put off this capital spending. Let them make the decision.
But the LED lights have nothing to do with the taxes.
Has nothing to do with the tax levy, Angus.
I understand that, but you can repurpose that money. We discussed that already. I understand that the money is earmarked. I understand that portion, but we also said that it could go out for a vote to be used and repurposed.
I don't support that. I don't support that at all.
Yes, but Lisa has an answer for that.
Right. The only way the capital reserve money could be repurposed is to go out to a vote to the public with it, which we would not be able to do until May of 2021. Steve wants to add to that or correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely right. And I just want to remind everybody, the more reserves that you plow in this year, what do you do 1 year out to replace them with? If you don't have the revenue to be able to replenish the reserve, again, as Matt very accurately pointed out, you start to bury yourself in the hole. You start next year's budget in that hole, that $1.1 million that you'd like to put in this year's budget becomes a hole 1 year from now in the next budget that you now have to make up because you're still paying payroll. Again, structurally balanced budget, you want reoccurring revenues to pay reoccurring expenses like payroll and benefits. So when you start paying payroll and benefits using reserve funds, it becomes a very, very dangerous situation. It becomes a very slippery slope in a hurry.
Well,
that's my concern.
What is the purpose behind having reserves then?
Well, absolutely, you can spend reserves, but what I'm saying is if you don't have the ability to keep replenishing those reserves so you can use those, what do you do?
But the point...
No one else is coming along. You're coming along where your state aid may be reduced by up to 20%, and you may not be able to replenish the exact reserves that you'd like to use.
Right, may not be able to is the terminology you use, and I agree.
Again, that's your risk.
You may be able to, right? The whole point for having reserves is for the worst case scenario. What could happen? We're saving it for a rainy day. Something bad may happen.
I go back.
We can't even leave our houses. We have to look outside the window to see what's going on. This is a pretty bad situation for a lot of people. That's the point that I'm making.
We're using 3.2 million of reserves. We're not using reserves. We're using a lot of reserves.
Listen, we can learn a lesson, and we've learned many lessons from the East, and I don't mean the Far East. I mean just down the road a piece.
Yes.
They had 6 to 8 million in their reserves, I'd say right around the year 2003, 2004, 2005. In 3 years, that reserve was down to my IQ, 0, okay? That's what it went down to.
Yeah.
How cash-strapped have they been ever since then? Even with the state throwing money into them,
right,
they were still cash-strapped. They didn't know how to use the reserves. They just kept on using them. Well, you know what? We're going to have a 0 tax increase. And they just kept on using the reserves. And then all of a sudden, you saw what happened. Not only did buildings close, but they started to kill programs. Not have the programs, kill them. They were dead.
But Paul, the difference is there was no pandemic in 2003.
Well,
you have people that can't leave their homes, people where the breadwinner in their house is no longer living,
Angus,
people that have no income, you have serious social issues that are going on that are not just going to be felt this year, but in years to come. So my point is that we're looking to save money in a time where our reserves could be used. And people can be helped a little bit. And,
right.
And we're looking at this chart and we're saying, oh, you're only talking about a 2%. It's only $142. There's people that can't afford dinner at night that are going to food pantries because they don't have a job. You know, it's very cavalier of us to just say, oh, it's only $142. To a lot of people in this area, $142 means dinner. It means a lot of things, you know, I mean, and I think for us to sit here and say, well, geez, you know, $36,000 is nothing, or what are you talking about? $8,000? There's people that in this area that would kill a man for $8,000. You know, I mean, honestly and truthfully, it's very cavalier of us the way that we're just talking about spending taxpayer dollars. It's not right.
Well, I think we still, as hard a time as it is for a lot of people, we still have a fiscal responsibility to the district. And I'm not trying to negate anything that you said, Angus. But we still have to do what is right for not just the taxpayers, but for the students who need to come here and get educated, and make sure that we can support the things that we are budgeting, and we need to be able to pay for those programs and those educators and everything else that goes into it.
Right.
So
I don't think there's any idea that we're not going to have our children educated. I mean, it's just a matter of how we're going to do it.
well, that's fine for this year. And then next year, when we've got a $5 million or $4 million budget hole, what are you going to do then? Pull out of the reserves again?
We don't know what's going to happen in the next 6 hours. Never mind what's going to happen.
You don't, and that's why it's foolish. I think, and that's why it's foolish to look that short-sighted. You can't do the 6-hour window. We need to look not only at May and June and September, but we need to make sure we're preparing ourselves for 21 and 22 and 23.
But in 21 and 22 and 23, there's a better probability that people will have work. You know what I mean? People will be back to work by that time. Otherwise, we got bigger problems than our school budget.
Matt,
So then it would be okay to do a 2.5% increase.
Matt, why is the fire department and the police department in Suffern collecting food for people living in the village? Why?
Don, I don't work in the village and I don't live in the village. And
last year,
as hard as it is for people, your question to me is not, it really has no bearing on my thought about this budget. We're talking about a school budget. We're not talking about a fire department or a police department or anything else. So we need, again, we know where everybody stands.
Talking about the people who live in this school district that are having financial difficulty. You are talking about this school district. You are talking about this school budget. Matthew, I mean, you have to think about the residents. That's your constituents. These are the people who need you to think about the budget. These are the people who are
what I'm doing. I'm thinking about the budget
on the table. Also, last year, you passed a budget that was 1%, and it wasn't this dire situation. There was not a pandemic that went on. We voted a 1% tax increase, and now you're thinking about a 2%, a 1.25. These are just numbers that you guys are throwing out. There's a pandemic going on. Please think about your constituents, think about your residents.
We clearly all have different opinions, and I don't think I'm going to convince Melissa or Don to vote for a 1.5, and I'm not going to get convinced to vote for a 0. So we've got to find that middle ground.
I really want less than 0.
Okay. Again, we need to just find the middle ground.
I would just like to point out that that's exactly where the number that I said is. It's in that middle ground.
Okay, so you're fine. So you're a 1. Middle ground. Well, when I middle ground, I think what I mean is consensus on an agreement. 1 is definitely between 0 and 2. I'll give you that.
Yes, it is. You're correct.
Is there consensus on a 1.25?
Well, I think so, but I think I'm the lone wolf, so.
Chris, 1.25?
I mean, I could go 1.25. I mean, I'm 1.25 or 1.5. I mean, those are my 2.
Tommy, would you do a 1.25? Tom?
Wake him up.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry. I had it on mute.
Would you support a 1.25?
I will support a 1.25. And what is the tax dollars what's the additional cost out of the
probably, I mean, based on what is on this slide,
$65.
About half
60,
a mil?
60,
65,
somewhere in there.
64.50.
Okay.
All right.
Once again, that's
All right.
not
I'll
the
support a
piece.
1.25.
Yes.
Angus, would you support a 1.25?
My ceiling is 1, I said.
Okay, so that's a no. You would not support a 125.
Yes, that's a no.
How about just no, I won't support a 125? Because now
No.
you're just, okay, fine. Melissa and Don, I assume that you're both a no.
Correct. For
All
me.
right. So there is consensus on a 125.
Okay. Time out. All right. If this is a big if, but it's a very possible if. Lee, the 2.1 million, I think it is 2.1 million for transportation, or 2.3, whichever the number.
2.6, I think it was.
Oh, 2.6.
Yeah.
Oh, we could buy a lot of lottery tickets with that. Okay, so if we don't need to spend that money, and I don't want to take anything away from Chestnut Ridge, but if we don't need to spend that money then goes into the coffers, if I may use that word, for 2021.
It would offset what we need to take out of reserves.
Okay, right, okay. Is there any
Steve,
way?
you're next.
Is there any way that we can like give a gift, take half of it towards lowering the tax? Like as Angus said, what does a million do? A million brings it down by how much? Approximately 1%?
That's correct.
All right. Look, I'm just trying to play with numbers here and thinking how we can do some manipulation that it's good for everyone, and it's like we're trying our best, putting 1.6 million back into whatever, and then taking that one if we could, and somehow say, hey, you know what? It's not going to be an increase of 1.225 or 1.5 or whatever, but it's going to go down 1% and drop down to 0.5 or 0.225. I mean, I don't know if we're allowed to do it.
I don't know the exact answer. I'm going to defer to Steve and I'll ask the attorney, but I think that once you vote on the budget, that's the way it is. I mean, because once the public votes to accept a budget, and then that's what the budget is, but I'll defer to Steve on that.
Yes, Lee, you are correct. And one of the things that you have to remember is that 2.6, our state aid on transportation, again, is about 48%. I'll round it off to 50% just to make it easy.
Right.
So let me paint the scenario for you. We saved 2.6 million this time because we had no transportation for half of March, April, May, and some of June. Now we are spending some of that because we are delivering meals right through the end of June.
Yep.
And we'll probably even have a summer feeding program that we haven't had before. So we will spend some of that. But remember, I'll go back to the aid picture. We receive almost 50% aid on that 2.6 million. So we only have about 2/3 of our transportation expenditures this school year. So that means we only get 2/3 of the aid that we will normally get and receive in our next school year, because the aid in transportation is always 1 year behind. You receive it 1 year later. So that means we're going to receive 1/3 less in transportation aid, or $1.3 million less in transportation aid next year that we will have to fund. So of that 2.6, 1.3 million will get pushed forward immediately to cover that. Okay, and then the other 1.3, if it is left, depending on what happens with all the meals that we're serving and everything else going on, that will absolutely go to fund balance and other things that we could do with it to obviously help the taxpayers in our next budget season. Absolutely, Paul.
But the delivering meals is much less than picking up and dropping off kids every day.
Certainly it is, yes. We're not sure about the aid picture on it, is what I mean on those meals, okay? Just to make that clear.
All right, let's say that someone wants to give a gift to Suffern Central, and it's $1 million.
Thank you, Paul.
Believe me, it would be my pleasure.
You played the lottery.
Okay, and they want to, right, we should all win the lottery. Can they designate that money to go pay for taxes and therefore it's spread over the community?
they can give an endowment and basically tell us exactly what we want to do with it in legal terms, absolutely, with their attorneys and whatnot. But not in this fiscal year necessarily. You have to do it in the next
Right,
fiscal year.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd have to reserve it to an offset, for example, of the tax levy or something. You can word it any way you want. Yeah.
Do you know somebody who's going to give $1 million, Paul?
I like the scenario.
Chestnut Ridge.
That would be nice.
It's just, there's money there.
How about the SEA? There's $1 million there. Can't hear you.
Paul, you're on mute.
Yeah,
Oh, you're muted.
Well, my wife would like that, okay? A freeze would be about $350,000. I think that was the difference between year one and year two, or maybe $450,000. It helps. It helps a lot, but it's not that big $1 million. We need big bucks, big bucks. What's that wheel of something or other? What was it? Big bucks, whatever the game show was. We have to.
Is there anything anybody would like to add that hasn't been touched upon already?
So are you all set for 1.25 for tomorrow night?
No. I like it, but would like less. And I'm just, how can we get less? How can we make it less?
$350,000 would bring that 1.25 or 1.25 to 1%, Paul.
I know, Angus. I'm looking at that too. Angus, okay. I will trade you my two daughters and 3 grandchildren, and you can have them, and that will equal that amount. Okay. This is tough. This is so tough. But once again, it's not so much the increase that people are paying, it's the entire package. It's a huge chunk of money. The school tax is a huge chunk.
What is the village tax going to be this year?
It's a 2% increase. So whatever it was, it's another 2%.
I had heard higher than that. I had heard about 4.
Oh, great. Oh,
Village of Suffern.
Village of Suffern, right.
Let's add on.
That's not like, I don't have that exactly.
Right.
I could be mistaken.
So we're going to ask for a tax increase also.
I think I think based on our conversations, we're asking for an increase regardless. It's just a question of what that increase is.
Yeah, but the lower, the better. Wish I knew how my wife keeps all the bills.
So on this, for the 1.25%, is that 114 million in your tax levy?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Christine,
say that again.
For this 1.25, is that 14 million in your tax levy? Steve?
Where are you referencing 14 million?
114 million. Is that what the tax levy is going to be? What's your tax levy going to be at 1.25%?
Let me see here. Hold on. We have it here. Give me just a second. Yeah, approximately.
No.
No, it's gonna be higher. Teresa, you got a calculator going there?
I'm trying. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's 112,837,534. It's 113,373 at 2%. So it wouldn't be higher.
Yeah.
Did you get that number?
Yes.
Yeah, 112 something, something.
112-837-534.
Thank you. And you're still using your planned fund balance of 3.1.
Yep.
And you haven't made that higher.
No, definitely increase that.
Same as it was last year, for this year.
Right, but maybe we should increase that. If you increase that, say by.
Well, again, you can increase reserves anywhere you want. I'm just saying, I just point out, it's just, you're gonna do it again next year, that's all.
You don't have to do it again next year.
Oh, we will. We'll need to.
You don't have to do it again next year. No, I have used fund balance without doing it again next year. You could do
If we get a 10% state aid cut?
Well, you may not get a 10% state aid cut. I mean, you have no idea if the president is going to allow the states to use FEMA, or if they are going to allow, if the president is going to allow to get states out. I mean, you have no idea what's going to happen yet. I think Cuomo's doing a really good job working on the president. So, I mean, I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm just worst case scenario, but I have no idea what's going to happen. But I have used fund balance before and not done it every single year. We have planned balance without doing it every single year.
Angus, how are you?
I'm sorry, Paul, what'd you say?
How are you?
I'm doing great, pal. How are you?
Good. The boys good?
Okay.
Good.
Look,
There are absolutely ways for us to do a 0% tax increase. I just don't understand why you all are saying no to it. I mean, I know that you're all for a 1.25, but there is a way that you can make it so that you do a 0% tax increase. I just don't understand why you're so against it, where you can do it, and it's $2 million out of a $112 million budget. I mean, like, for $2 million, wouldn't you rather see that your taxpayers and your constituents are happy? I mean, it's not even $2 million. It's $1,250,000. And to make everybody happy, to just say it's a 0% tax increase. I don't understand why you're not willing to do that.
what I'm against is the overuse of reserves.
It's not an overuse of reserve.
With the information that's in front of me, with the information that's in front of all of us, a 0% increase would be the use of about $5 million in other funds. Tax certs.
And right now, so that it's 1.25, how much of a reserve are you using? 4 million?
Listen, again, I would prefer to go higher than 1.25.
So if you're doing 1.25, what's the difference of doing a 0? You make everybody happy. You're still going to have an increase because of the assessed values.
The difference is over $1 million. That's the difference.
Yeah, and you're talking about reserves that you have are $30 million. Okay. I mean, like, if you can't use it now, what are you waiting for?
Listen, we have, I think, exhausted this. Okay, I'm not going to change my opinion of reserves. You're not going to change your opinion of a 0%. So we can keep having a circular conversation, or we can just try to finalize this and move on. So I would prefer to finalize this and move on.
Well, we're moving on to saying goodbye. Good night. So I think. You know what? It's not the increase. Let's say that it was 0, okay? Let's say that it was. Am I on?
Yes.
Okay, good. So let's say that once again, go back to the amount of money that people are paying. I've looked, but I'm not the record keeper here in this particular. Yeah, I don't know, right. Whatever it is that the amount of school tax that people are paying, forget about the increase that would come this year or that would come next year or doesn't or whatever. But it's the current amount that people are paying. That's the part that hurts. It's not the extra $39 for the year, the extra $90 for the year. That's not the part that hurts. It's the bulk that hurts. It's the $200 a month or the $300 a month or whatever the figure is. That's the part that hurts. That's a huge amount of money. And over the course of a year, all of a sudden, well, your school taxes are done. Oh my God, that's a huge amount. It's not the extra $30, $40, $60. It's the other part. And that's what we can't really help people with.
That's already there.
I know, but how?
So you want to add to it, Paul?
Look, adding to it stinks. I like it to be, hey, just pay the 90, just pay the increase. Forget about, the balance, just pay the interest, the $90 at 1.5, the $39 at 1%. Just pay us this and just owe us. Maybe we can do
you're going to have an increase in the assessed values to go forward. You're not going to have this small increase in assessed values, and then you're adding on top of it this 1.25. It's just
it's
very
a killer.
sad what you're doing to the taxpayers. It's just very sad.
I'm doing it to myself as well, and to you, and we're all doing it to each other.
But you're okay doing it. You're not getting any food from the fire department or the police department.
No, I'm just bringing it to them. That's all.
Yeah.
I know. Listen, I always say that.
Listen, do the zero this year, and then let's work about it next year. But, I can't talk about next year when we're having a hard time getting through this year.
Okay, but what you just said is basically just kick the can, and I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with kicking the can.
Kicking the can. It's not.
What Don just said is absolutely. Don just said, "Worry about it next year." That is kicking the can.
It's watching out for your neighbors and your loved ones. It takes a village, and what you're doing is not taking care of your village.
What was just said? What was just said? Was we'll worry about it next year. That is kicking the can. That is almost the definition.
Holy shit.
You might not get to next year. The hole in the ground is now. It's not rain. It's a tsunami. Okay. People are.
Yeah. Okay. So we won't get the next year.
Just raise the tax because it's not your money. It's okay.
Of course, it's my money. I got to pay it.
Oh wow! But you're working, right?
And I guess I should feel bad about the fact that I'm working.
Well,
what is your point?
Heard about the people who aren't working.
We do feel bad. Wait a minute. It's not a question of feeling bad or not feeling bad.
Point is at all, but that's okay.
Okay. All right. Listen.
I think we're done here unless anybody has something actually substantial to add.
Yeah, I do, but I'll save it for a rainy day, so it doesn't matter.
Chris, do you have anything that you want to add before we sign off?
Paul, if you have something to say it.
No, it's just a philosophy that I've always had.
So speak to it, man.
Okay. My philosophy is, listen, we live in the country club of the United States. Okay? This is a country club. Maybe not the last 4 months or whatever, or however long. But to put it very simple, I guess I pay dues to the country club. And my dues are my taxes, whether it's my federal, my state, my school, my village, my town, whatever it is. These are the dues. But I'm living in this incredible country, and I'm fortunate to be, there. But for the grace of God, go on. That's how I feel. But it doesn't mean that I don't feel awful. Then I'm in charge of, Paul, you're on the school board. You gotta raise taxes. No, I don't have to raise taxes, but unfortunately, prices go up and everything. And So that's it. I'm going to put myself on mute. I've had enough. It's past my bedtime by 3 hours. So.
Well, the only thing I would say to you is with regard to that, picture you're part of that country club and all the people that you play golf with every day, that you eat dinner with and go to events with those people, now all of a sudden can't afford to be in the club anymore. Are you gonna still make them pay their dues to the club? That's all I got.
If it's up to me, they don't have to pay dues. And if I could afford it, I pay dues for everybody. But I've always said that. Look, I'm not your average guy. Look, I know it's not I come from the 1820s, Angus. It's a different
listen, it's not an easy decision. I agree with all of you, and everybody's making some good points. But the only way we can get through this is by listening to each other.
And I do.
Bounce this back and forth, and we all
we all do.
At this point, we all are. I mean, I think that you're right. The United States is a great place to live, and last 3 months, 4 months have been a difficult place to live.
Yeah,
because you're confined to your house, except for necessary situations. You know, at this point, there's a lot of people who have it a whole lot worse than some of us. You know, that are losing family members, that are losing jobs, that are losing their homes, and can't even put food on the table. They're behind on their mortgage. You know, it's a horrible situation, and you know, we have to try to be sympathetic and empathetic to these people, because it's a very, very difficult decision. The decision that you're making tomorrow night is impacting everybody. And you have to, that's why I think when you're asking for information and saying, listen, we don't have enough on this, we need to know, how much we're spending in utilities, or Melissa has been asking for other things. You asked for some things tonight, slowing by building or what have you. This is not a big ask. These are important decisions, and the more information that we have, the better off we are in making that decision. And that's
why we hold another meeting tomorrow before the budget meeting tomorrow night, and get the information, from Lee Weber and so forth, and see from Steve if there's any other items that they could look at the budget.
There's already there's already a meeting called for tomorrow night.
Right, but
so you can get whatever, and I think we already addressed this, that whatever information administration can get available between now and then will get emailed to you, will get sent to you, and you'll have it, and you'll be able to review it before the meeting. And then when we get to the meeting tomorrow, there's no executive. It is simply a meeting to open and to vote on one action item, which will be this budget. Obviously, you can, we can have discussion as we always do, or, as we tend to do on action items. So it's not as if you just walk in and vote yes or no. I mean, so you have the ability again to discuss what we're going to vote on, and maybe the information you get between now and then will change your opinion. Maybe it won't, but that's how we're going to go forward with it.
Well, I hope that, listening to this will then send their information, their questions, and their concerns to the school board. Let's hear from them. What do they think in terms of a 1.25 or a 0 in tax increase? Let's hear from them. I know we received a notice this today from one of the people begging us not to raise the tax.
Sure, absolutely, and there's obviously always going to be people on both sides of the coin. So you can get one email from somebody that says they don't want you to raise the taxes. I mean, I don't think you can make a decision based on 1 or 4 or 11 emails. I think you need to really
asking for a tax increase.
I'm sorry?
I have never gotten an email for a tax increase. Everybody's been asking.
Of course, no one wants a tax increase, but remember,
nobody ever wants a tax increase.
People and programs. We're keeping our people with jobs. We're keeping all of our programs in place. All of the programs that this community cares so much about.
Nobody's saying to cut programs. Nobody's saying to cut jobs.
We need money to
use reserve.
We need money to pay for the program.
That nobody's saying to cut jobs or programs ever. That has never been my mouth
But
on
that's-
just zero
that's-
or negative tax increase.
But that's where we get to $144 million with. When we don't cut people and we don't cut programs, that's where we get to that number. I want to make one other point that has a lot of talk's been done about this. So this just has to do with our children, our families who have children in the district. This doesn't speak about the others. Remember a few months ago, we talked about free and reduced lunch, and our various schools were between about 25 and 40 something percent free and reduced lunch. Do you folks remember that conversation?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so right now we are offering free breakfast and lunch to any child in the district whose parent signs them up for it. They don't have to be free and reduced lunch. We are delivering it to their home. Literally, all they have to do is fill out a form, which is available in 2 languages. That's all they have to do. The food comes to their door, literally to their doorstep. Right now, we have 600 students taking advantage of that. I'm so glad we can provide that food to them. That number out of our total students is only 15% of our population. So think about that. We have 25 to 40% of our students eligible for free and reduced lunch. We opened up food delivery to every child in our district. We have gotten the word out in 100 different ways in 2 languages. And we only have 15% of our students taking advantage of that. So that just to give you a little bit of perspective on that, I understand for certain families, this is horrible. This has been a horrible, horrible time, and it's not getting better. And it's only going to get worse for some people. I also see that 15% of our families are taking advantage of that, which is food, which is being delivered to their doorstep. So I just wanted to make you aware of that because it was such a hot conversation earlier in the year.
Didn't the governor mandate that we make that offer?
They mandated that we had to provide it, but the people have to tell us they want it.
Right. So it's not
that
we didn't do that out of the kindness of our hearts.
No, but
that was a state mandate.
Yeah, that wasn't the point I was making, Angus. The point I was making is about the percentage of students who are taking advantage of it, which is a lower percentage than one would think. Than I would think.
There's a possibility that there's people out there that don't know about it either.
It is. Anything is possible. We have sent it out in every which way possible, including having people, teachers, schools, the district, 2 languages. We have sent this out in many ways. It would be hard for me to believe that there's really a student out there who doesn't know we're doing it. There might be people without kids who don't know we're doing it. But if you've got a kid in this district, this has come to you in many, many, many ways.
Will you be doing that during the summertime also?
Yeah, Steve mentioned that earlier, but it was a little mumbled. We have never been able to provide food service in the past, but we've applied to be able to do it for the summer. And we anticipate it. Steve, it was approved or we anticipate it being approved?
We anticipate it being approved. We anticipate state ed is going to change the regulations for us.
Right. In the past, we weren't allowed to. So now we're hoping we're allowed to, and we intend to continue.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything anybody would like to add? Any final thoughts or comments before we close? Okay. I'll take that as a no. So I think that we are complete and we are done with this budget workshop. Lee, I think the only follow-ups were that you said you would reach out to Mr. Canty regarding, the freeze. And
To be honest,
yeah, I'm sorry.
To be honest, I'm going to check with Mr. Shaw first because it's possible this falls under negotiations in public. Shouldn't be done. So I'm going to check with Mr. Shaw.
That's fair. And then whatever information that you can provide to the board with more depth, more detail would be appreciated by some. Other than that, I think we can close and adjourn this budget workshop. So I will thank Steve, especially for putting this together, for presenting, and for everybody that's watching. Thanks for taking the 3 hours at this workshop, listening to all the different opinions, trying to understand how our budget's working and what we're